So one of the big things on the ballot for Wisconsin was the legalization of marijuana for for 21-year-olds and up. So that was a
Oh,
huge
wow.
thing. Yeah, so we voted on that today. So I have no idea where it'll go. It probably won't go through if I had to guess, but that's an exciting thing it's the first time it's been on the ballot, I'm pretty sure. So
Yeah. And like we were saying before, like the first time voting since Kerry Bush. Last time I voted was for Obama the second time. And
yeah,
even still, like I haven't voted since then. I've never been more interested to vote than I think ever. Like this is the most I've ever been like proactive, like making sure I'm registered, all that stuff, doing the research on all the candidates and everything. So I feel like there's got to be if both of us are voting, there's got to be a lot of fucking people that haven't voted that are going to be voting this time.
oh yeah, and I think next election will probably be the biggest voter turnout of all time. Like that wouldn't surprise me at all, just because even the people who were, and not out of the loop or just didn't care enough, but like even if you were just kind of in the background or standing in the back of the crowd, now it's like everyone's passions are kind of wound up, and you want to like do the thing because you don't like what's happening now. So I think that's kind of a backlash to whatever's happening negatively right now, is that everyone is so geared up. They're going to take more interest, they're going to pay more attention, and they're actually going to get out and go vote, or at least that's the idea.
Yeah.
I feel like that has to be the case.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Democracy, that's definitely a good step. And as you and I both know, like the whole system is so fucked up anyway. Like to vote for one person over the other person in such a system, like to put so much faith into your vote being that it's going to be the decision that's going to change the world.
Right.
But at the same time, when it comes to democracy and having like people actively want to vote, I think that's a really good sign. And then the fact that there are so many like progressive younger candidates coming in to challenge the incumbents on the Democratic side, which is seems to be a huge overall within the Democratic Party going on right now. Getting rid of the super delegates, like again, all the new people coming in. So, I think that's part of the whole thing. Can't just vote Republican or vote Democrat for the sake just because. Mm-hmm. And that's like the major Republican propaganda message. It's just vote Republican if you hate the devil, basically.
Right. Exactly.
And then it's like, and same thing with Democrat too. Like you don't just vote for a political party just because. But at the same time, right now, it's like there's so much out of balance from just like the Republicans own so much power in the whole situation that I think it would behoove America to have a little bit more balance, a little bit more checks and balances in the situation.
And I'd like to think that that's what's going to happen, because people on both sides will be reevaluating. Hopefully, it's like if you were a staunch Democrat no matter what, and then you like moved your beliefs or like convinced yourself to like support Hillary after Bernie didn't win. It's like, okay, well, I'm still a Democrat and they're still on my side. And you had to like make yourself want to vote for her. And then she still fucking lost. It's kind of like, oh, okay, well, maybe I should think about it a little bit more. And then I think on the other side too, all the hardcore, for just like no matter what, Republicans are rethinking their things now because of what their party looks like. And so maybe people will be more willing to be open to maybe one or two more things here and there, maybe for a House seat or a Senate seat. And then maybe hopefully will balance out a little bit because people will be more objective when they're voting, and not just be strictly blue or red. So yeah. We'll see. I mean, still 2 years till that happens, but it'll be interesting to see what happens tonight. I mean, I think I'm not really exactly sure how much can change or is being predicted to change within the seats and all that shit. But I mean, we'll see. This is the first big test or review of how we've been how we felt for the last 2 years. Everyone's been kind of like on this roller coaster, whichever side you're on, everyone's been inside the ride. So this is kind of it'll be very telling, I think, that if people are actually upset and they're motivated, they're going to actually go out and try to make change or help change. or if they're just going to still sit in their living rooms and be like, well, yeah, fuck that guy, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, like
I feel
like
okay,
been that, like that's been us for the last several, many years.
Yeah.
The fact that we're actually doing that suggests to me that there are a lot of people out there that are just doing what you got to do. Because as much as there's that argument that if you don't vote, then you can't say shit like when the results come out. And I get that to a certain extent, especially when like a presidential election. But when it comes down to this, it's so much local government stuff that, and like when you understand it, that's really where all the major decisions get happening. A lot of the upper echelon of government is all symbolic or figurehead based. And this type of stuff is much more, practical things that could possibly happen.
Exactly. That could possibly happen. I mean, it's not everyone just blowing smoke up your ass, which is what they're doing at the highest levels. It's like, okay, maybe you'll try to do something. Obama tried to do healthcare, like it went through and got blended up a little bit, but he tried to do something. But for the most part, there's a bunch of, it's business as usual. But like you said, local stuff, it could make a big difference. So we'll see.
Yeah, I've been in every now and then. I'm in kind of a communication with Jamie, which is kind of interesting to me. Like I follow her Instagram page, the Gay Who Strayed. Have you seen that? We talked about that, right? That's her Instagram page. That once she switched over to be a Trump supporter, she's now like part of the Trump like campaign world, and she has over like 70,000 followers on her Instagram page.
Wow.
And like a whole merch store, and she's like totally taken that her way that she does things, but now it's like all make America great again type stuff. And I actually I don't criticize it. I've learned to go down that rabbit hole. I don't go down that road anymore. But she did have she was posting all, the Democrats are evil, Democrats are evil, Democrats are evil. And I asked her, I sent her, what do you think about George Bush and Dick Cheney? Do you think they're cool? And she's like, absolutely not. Why would you say that? And I'm like, well, they're Republican, and they're also guilty of some very questionable shit that should be held accountable, just like Hillary Clinton, let's just say. And I just never see you post anything about them. So I'm just curious, like where do you stand on that? And the thing she wrote back to me was just so bizarre, saying that Donald Trump has basically tamed the Republican Party. That's what she said. He tamed the Republican Party, and that those guys don't matter anymore, and they're out of power. And I didn't even go on and respond after that, because I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Tamed the Republican Party? What does that even mean? But to say that it's a double standard, because by the same definition, Hillary Clinton's in the past and she lost the election. Why are we still like chanting lock her up if she is no longer relevant anymore?
Right.
So like it's a double, like, okay, so let's just not pay attention to Dick Cheney and George Bush, so it's just it got me really. The thing is, it's a cult. It's a cult with Donald Trump as the cult leader, and whatever he says is absolutely like the words channeling Jesus to save the world. And it's just like amazing to me that there are people out there that are so in that belief system. So I like, even with all the election stuff and what could possibly happen, you have like a dedicated cult following of a certain way. They're not going to budge no matter what.
Right. And so in that mentality or that knowing, it's like futile to be argumentative with them at all. It's just kind of, you're not going to get anything but higher blood pressure at that point. It was the same thing with Bernie supporters, not to put them in this,
right.
But I mean, they were possibly, if you would have taken all of their IQs to Bernie supporters, then they might have been slightly higher than all the Trump supporters. But it's still the same fascination and cult following. Like it's the same people bopping around, right? There's always a percentage of those people who are just looking to find something that kind of aligns with things that they've been told or that they feel, and then just to be all about that. Like, that's an exciting thing to be about. People are like that with bands. People are like that with other artists. They're like that with food. They're like, with everything. It's just another thing to hop on to. So it doesn't surprise me, that happened with Jamie. but it's kind of, futile to
Yeah.
pursue a conversation with that. And not saying I know, because I don't know anything about all this shit, but you're just kind of giving them an opportunity to make you mad, I guess, probably.
It's like and it's funny because it's such a double standard to say that to say that there is such a polarity. You've got the Republicans and the Democrats. You've got even the white hats and the black hats within the deep state, however you want to say it. We should get into that too, because I watched that twice actually.
Shit,
once
okay.
And once again with my dad earlier. But I'm not so sure anymore about the clear-cut white hats and black hats, the good guys and bad guys storyline. I have a feeling that is just our cultural programming, because that's all we know is conflict and side, chess, this side versus that side. And that's all we know. And it's like, there must be a bad guy. If we get rid of the bad guy, then everything will be fine again. I don't know how clear cut that is. And to build a whole conspiracy worldview based on that, I'm not so sure. Like, even to say, like, just jump ahead to the alien thing, is like, there are the good aliens and the bad aliens. Stephen Greer, who, in my opinion, out of all the whistleblowers and disclosure people, is like the actual disclosure guy. He actually has whistleblowers and insiders and all that type of stuff, compared to, like, I got this guy who told me the story and I believe him.
But I can't tell you who he is or what he looks like or what he said and why he's...
We'll call him Daniel.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So it's hard to say that there's going to be this... like Stephen Greer even says, like, the aliens, when we get, like, a lot of the good versus bad is just like our Earth, like, human understanding. Once you transcend that and you go into outer space and you're part of the Galactic Confederation, however you want to call it, that stuff is completely not part of that system. That they don't see things like we do in terms of, like, this side versus that side. It's all one to them. So, and the narrative of having good aliens and bad aliens, it's like, as much as David Wilcock and Corey Goode talk about all that stuff, it's like, it just seems to be part of that old world view of like Ronald Reagan, like, oh, imagine if there was some alien threat that would unite us all. It's like, wow, there's some bad, evil reptilians that they're the bad guys and we're victims of their bullshit. It's like, I'm not so sure. I mean, I wouldn't say I know, but I'm not so convinced on that specific narrative anymore.
Well, I think that's a good evolution to come to. I mean, we've definitely both been on a very wavy path when it comes to all these behind the scenes things going on. And obviously with David Wilcock and all these guys that we've come across in the past, and we've gone not necessarily back and forth, but our conclusions have modified a bit, and we're less certain about it and we're less convinced about it, which is good, because it's a nice intro to help understand something. It's like, okay, things are always way more complicated, but you can't learn the complicated stuff immediately. You kind of need like a baseline, So it's like, okay, we could put these guys in the good category, these guys in the bad category. They've done this. They want this to happen. So you can paint it that way. And then from that, like those roots, then it's like, okay, well, but it's actually more complicated because these guys want to do this stuff, which is not actually a bad thing. And then these guys are doing this thing just to get this done. And that's actually a horrible thing, but they're trying to get to a spot that you agree with. So it's the same thing with politics. It's like, I think everything is kind of blurring, because the same thing with, the perception in the 90s, or like after Bush, it was like Republican bad, Democrat good. If you're under 30, that's like immediately what everyone thought. It's like, fuck Bush, unless you grew up, under very staunch Republican family. But now it's like both sides are like, wait, what? Like, I'm not really sure what to believe anymore. And people are kind of taking a second to think about it. And it's becoming more and more obvious to us, I think, what the insider stuff and the black budget and the cabal and all these guys, it's not as black and white as we've been told that it is. But I don't know where to land on that. It's like, how do you get a grasp on it? And I think it's better to, I think we're doing better at not jumping to conclusions, you and I in particular, than we were for sure. Like I know the first couple of times I talked to my parents or Al or anything about all this stuff, I'm sure I sounded like a very certain ignorant 21-year-old kid who just learned all this information and I know the secret to the universe.
Yeah.
Because it just felt like an exciting thing, and also obviously it struck some chords within us, so we were like, this feels right and everyone else is wrong, and it makes me feel good to pretend like I know better than everybody else. But now it's like, all right, we're a little bit older, we've gained a lot of information, and we've seen things happen and we see things not happen. We've seen a lot of things not happen, and we've heard about a lot of things, and we've heard about a lot of people and a lot of stories and what's actually happening. And then we see things happen, and then we hear the background interpretation of what that is. Oh, that was really this happening, but all you saw was this. And it's like, okay, am I just taking one dude on the internet's word for it? Or am I gonna like wait and see how it pans out? So I think a lot of it for us right now is kind of stepping back. We want to participate, like voting and stuff, like the stuff that we can affect and we can see. And yeah, we don't know who the people are in the background and what they're trying to accomplish really. But I think a lot of people, this has been such a good reflective period where we're just like, holy shit, this is where we're at right now. Like, this is what we all did. And then everyone's jumping sides, and Jamie's got 4 million followers and she's a Trump supporter. Whereas like when we lived together in 2012, that just would have been like unbelievable to think about, you know? But right now it's not that surprising because people change like that. And I just think in 2 years, the next election, 2020 will be very, 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 very telling of what's happening and how open people are to change. And I think it'll be definitely an arrow pointing us and showing us where we're trending. If we keep going to the bad place, then I might start getting worried about that humanity's going to kill itself. But if we start going a little bit the other way, like as a group, like a larger group, then I think I'll have a bit more hope. It'll just be really, really telling, because I don't really know where it's going to go these days, because it seems like it's getting worse and it also seems like it's getting better at the same time. So I really don't.
The answer is yes to that. It's like it's both. It's absolutely both of those. Yeah. And even to use David Wilcock's narrative of there's two possible outcomes in this whole thing, where one of them is the ascension, where the good guys go to heaven and the not chosen people end up having to get reincarnated or suffer and all that. And then the other narrative is that there's going to be like a worldwide apocalypse where just like the entire, earth changes and everything. And I think it's like we've been talking about for a while. It's going to be both of those. And a lot of what ends up happening is really going to be dependent on our own perception. Like the real shift in consciousness, the real ascension, all that stuff is going to be an internal thing. And the way that we see the world, because it's all going to be happening. Like we're going to be seeing the earth going through major changes, and we're going to be seeing ascension type stuff at the same time. Depending on if we want to see the world through a lens of fear, or if we want to see things through a lens of love and compassion. And I think even still with a lot of the, like, let's just say for the sake of argument that there are going to be some sort of mass arrests or, deep state disclosure, ultimately a Hollywood ending to a B-movie Hollywood story that we've been saying, potentially could be happening. I think that the disclosure is really not what we think it is. And yeah, so
I think that's how everything will be, right? That's how everything that we've been like gearing up and being prepared for as humanity will not end up being the way that we thought it was going to be. And
yeah.
Then, like reinterpret it. Like we might even have to be like told, maybe that's why David Wilcock and people are here like that, to kind of clarify things, because I feel like things are going to happen that we thought we've been hearing about the mass arrest. We've been hearing about disclosure. We've been hearing about mass sightings. We've been hearing about a bunch of stuff, changing the economy, redistribution of wealth, like all this stuff is going to happen. And we have an idea of how we think it's going to happen because of Hollywood. It's like, all right, we're going to see this, and then this is going to happen, and then all of a sudden your bank account's going to have $1 million in it. It's gonna be really cool. And all the bad guys are going to be in jail, but we're going to give them a fair trial, and nobody's going to get hurt. We're going to set examples so we have a better idea of the future, and we can progress positively into the golden age of humanity. And it's like, okay, that's a nice 2-hour-long story that you go see at the Marcus Theater, but what's really going to happen? The reality is always more convoluted and stranger than fiction, right? That's what they say.
Yeah.
So I feel like a lot of stuff's going to happen, and someone's going to have to be like, you're going to be like, wait, what the fuck was that? Like, I've been told by, you know, Twitter and Fox News and Facebook and Reddit that this is what happened, but I think people will have to actually break down what this actually means, because everything could look scary and everything could look exciting if you look at it in certain lenses, but it's going to have to be decoded. I think it's just not going to be that clear, and stuff might have already happened that we don't really understand, but it's just going to, I don't know. Yeah. It's just not going to be the way that we thought it is going to be.
Yeah.
It's just going to be disappointing, but I think it'll be ultimately cooler, and hopefully cooler and more fun and less scary, but we'll see. Like, it could happen. I feel like all of the outcomes are still possible. No matter, more than 2 of them, at least 3, I'd say.
At least 3. At least 3 possible outcomes. Couldn't agree more with that.
That's the one point I disagree with David Wilcock heavily. There's at least 3, not 2.
Yeah, there's at least 3 sides to the story. And, you know, the thing, too, is that with a lot of the proposed mass arrests and all that type of stuff, and the deep state and the cabal and, like, the whole conspiracy of the pedophiles and all that shit, it's like, if that type of shit were to happen and that type of truth were to come out, it would naturally enrage people. The people would be enraged and very, like, let's burn these motherfuckers down. And that's what the whole QAnon, like, right-wing evangelical pro-Trump, you know, deep state conspiracy is all about, is that this shit's going to happen. The bad guys need to be fucking come down. But I think that's easier said than done, because if you want to get deeper into what their supposed philosophy, like the law of one and everything, and choosing love and promoting a message of love and compassion and all that stuff, for one thing, that documentary did not resonate at all with that. That was like that was a very scary. The music, annoying as fuck to me.
The music, oh, what the whole thing. All right, so we're talking about the Above Majestic, this new David Wilcock documentary that came out. Even though he wasn't the director or the producer, but he was obviously the focal point of it. It just came out a couple of days ago, and Alex and I both just watched it last night. But we made the same observation about the music. Some of the editing was just poor in general, but Absolutely. It reminded me. And just reminded me kind of the vibe of, like, sometimes like an Alex Jones documentary that's meant to make you kind of feel like, oh, this is scary. This is scary, intense information. Like, it was kind of, you know, ambient and sci-fi, but it definitely, like, erred on the side of, like, a little bit creepy. And I made that same observation. I was like, what is this?
Yeah, like, I thought it was
definitely not about
the beginning. Like, it was, yeah, no. And there was, and the whole, it was like, I'm like, where's the fucking positive message from, like, the Sphere Being Alliance and the Blue Avians and the Law of One? Like, that was absent throughout the whole thing. It wasn't until, like, the very last, like, 5 minutes of the movie, they're like, the movement. And they talk about, like, how we need to have, like, you know, love in our hearts. It was very, like, unbalanced. Like, the very last, like, moment, oh, yeah, by the way, like, everything will be fine as long as, you know, you're nice to people. And it was just like, yeah, that just felt very understated at the very end. And then, like, it was just so ominous and dark. And if they want to have a message of love and, like, let's say these mass arrests happen, and if the Blue Avians, or even just the general understanding of love and compassion, is the way we need to be evolving, then, like, if we keep promoting these deep state, even reptilians, as something not self, like literally alien, then when that shit happens, we're going to want to burn that witch. We're going to want to kill that fucking thing. Just, like, take them and separate them. And that, I think, is a very bad action. That's not part of the Law of One. That's the opposite of the Law of the One. You know, like, it's like the concept of loving your enemy. Like I've said before, like, we got to learn to love Dick Cheney, which, to say that sounds ridiculous, because Dick Cheney's a pretty fucking horrible guy based on all the shit that I know or think I know. But then again, it's like, we got to love this person because he's a human being. He's part of the race. And the thing is, guess what? Every human being has got a reptilian hindbrain. So I'm not trying to sympathize with what they describe as the reptilians at all. But at the same time, I'm just concerned that by propping up a narrative conspiracy of fear and contempt over these criminals, basically, that we're just going to fall into the same trap, like, of just the mob mentality. And that's not what the Law of One's about. The Law of One's about unity and forgiveness and compassion and all those things. And like, there's when Patrick was here, he was telling me about Native American tribes and what they'll do if there is a banishment like protocol. Like, let's say you fuck up and you do something awful. They don't just kick you out. And the actual approach is not like coming to that person. Let's say you're as a community and they come together like sort of a court trial thing, and the person comes up. The community doesn't look at that person and say, what did they do wrong that we need to hold them accountable for? It's the opposite. They say, what did we not do that allowed this to happen? So the community takes on the responsibility of the person who fucked up, and they give them three chances. And the first two times are just to basically provide them with all the support that they didn't have. Examine where did we go wrong? How can we help them? The third time, if they didn't learn from the mistakes, then they are pushed out. And the idea is that, look, we did everything we can to help you. Now it is your obligation. If you want to come back to the community, then you need to show initiative. We've shown you initiative. So if there's like a mass arrest type thing to just go and fucking like lock up Hillary Clinton and like kill all Dick Cheneys in the world, that's just like taking the tumor out of the cancer patient without addressing the original problem in there. Mm-hmm. So it just, that doc Above Majestic just felt kind of like a complete 180 from what I really loved, and I think we both really loved about David Wilcock in the beginning. It was like he was like full on conspiracy, like deep state, like reptilian evil aliens trying to eat us. Like, I don't know. It didn't have a good vibe to me.
No, it didn't. And it started off with the Law of One quote, and he's like the biggest toter of the Law of One. And we only know about the Law of One because of him, and it wasn't mentioned at all, except for the quote in the beginning. I don't even think they talked about it one time, and it was all about creating this like scary telling the story. Maybe if it's like a 2-part thing, maybe this is like the beginning of it that like explains everything and lays it out and how it's been, and then offering, the other side of it. But like you said, that I literally thought the movie was over, and then it was like the movement, and it was like 3 minutes of the movement, and it was like, wait, you're right, that doesn't balance anything out. You're just kind of throwing it in there because he probably watched it and was like, oh shit, we don't have anything like positive in there. Let's throw a quick segment in there. Like, it kind of goes against almost everything that David Wilcock's been talking about since for 10 years, to us at least. He would always, have the cool, like just super secret stuff and like know this and that, but he would never, it would always have a positive curve to it. And this one didn't. This was like fear porn. I mean, it wasn't like aggressive fear porn, but it was subtle fear porn.
Ominous fear porn. That fucking, and like the production value on itself, like looking at it objectively as a movie, it was terrible. Like the lighting was awful, the sound was awful, the music nothing was mixed properly. There were even like title cards for people that would come in before and after the fucking person even showed up. Some people didn't have title cards at all.
I know, I noticed that. And I was like, is this a fucking joke? Like, I literally thought he was going to put a statement out saying, oh, sorry, that was like the earlier cut. We didn't mean to.
Yeah. There's no quality control. Like David Wilcock, who claims on many occasions to be a filmmaker, did anyone even like watch this before they fucking uploaded it? Like, that's
what it felt like. It felt like nobody watched it. Like, it never got proofread. Like, there's a bunch of just like, me and you easily could have made a better production than that. Like, easily, like not even a question. And then if you watch it a couple of times, it's obvious that sometimes the music got too loud or it got too quiet or the editing, just like the cuts were bad or the title cards. I was like, how do you miss that title card? Like, that was unbelievable to me. So right then, if I was unconvinced, at that point, that definitely like solidified it for me. Like, I'm very unsure about this whole thing. And that was a very weird experience. I'm not sure what I was expecting. But I was expecting a more positive and well put together thing than that. So that was a very interesting experience. And I don't know how to feel about any of it now.
Yeah.
Like,
and
the whole thing, is that all made up? Like, have we been duped for like 10 years? Like, fuck,
I
dude.
know. I know, and it was literally January that I was still like, watching Cosmic Disclosure, checking in on this shit. What's the newest report? And back to even stringing in what we were saying before about like how it's not always as black and white as we think it is, in terms of the story that they are, I want to say, spinning, because the thing is I don't see this as like the terrible production value and a lot of the red flags would immediately make you think, is any of this even real? Personally, though, I think that a lot of it is real. There is a lot of reality to it, but it's being spun by people that are so convinced of their worldview and have the ego complex thing going on.
They all clearly had egos, except Corey. Obviously,
dude,
Corey.
Jordan Sather, man, like that fucking guy. Like I personally do not like that guy. I mean, bless him as a child of God and humanity. No harm upon to you, Jordan Sather. But when it comes down to like the vibe I get from him, it was like I looked up the definition of like Urban Dictionary of a tool, and he was exactly a tool. He was just basically with these kind of on the coattails of Corey Goode and David Wilcock promoting, and then dude, I'm jumping around a bit here, but the fact that it ended with like a Donald Trump speech was just like, that was like one thing I've really steered away from them on, is because they've been really harping on the QAnon conspiracy, and I don't fucking buy that shit. I just don't buy it. I don't see that as a possibility. Not to say that there isn't some sort of intelligence war going on, but I doubt or I question that maybe this whole QAnon thing was like some sort of effort to exploit the conspiracy theory community, who will basically believe any testimony if they say it's true, weaponize the 30 to 40 million evangelical people out there that are now behind this to support Trump and whatever he does, because on some other level, even though it looks really shitty, he's actually doing all this great stuff. And it's like, I have a hard time fucking believing it. Jordan Sather is one of the biggest proponents of the QAnon conspiracy.
Oh, okay. Wait, so was he in the movie?
Majestic? Yeah. He was like the younger dude that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't like just his delivery and the vibe about him, like you said. However far that goes, but you can go a long way, I think, in seeing the honesty in people, and then the intention you can really see in body language and how they speak and what they say. And yeah, that guy. None of them were kind of like, I mean, Corey Goode's just like in his own category, obviously, because he's I don't know what he went through, but he's not a regular person at all. So it's like I can't read him at all. He's just kind of, no, I'm not emotion, non-elaborating, just very simple and to the point. But I don't know. So I can't read, but everybody else, it's not too hard typically for me to get a read on them, even watching a movie. So yeah, it was just the whole thing. I don't know. That was an interesting experience. Yeah, like those things usually excite me. They're usually like, oh, this is awesome. I'm pumped. They're a refresher on that. All this wild shit is still going on, which that kind of was, but it's like I don't really need that. Like it didn't really benefit me at all.
Was not groundbreaking. There were no whistleblowers to say anything. The only whistleblower that was actually in there was a video clip of that guy Michael Rupert from when he was in LA and called out the CIA director for like the drug trafficking and all that shit. That's a whistleblower. Whistleblower is somebody that has credentials, that is who they can prove who they say they are, and there's some sort of like paper trail and evidence to promote. Otherwise, it's not a fucking whistleblower. I think that's like a hard line that needs to be defined, especially when it comes to Corey Goode. And I don't think we've talked about this at all, but Corey, I've been listening to this podcast, which David Wilcock and Corey Goode, there's a group of people they're calling the Dark Alliance. Okay, Corey Goode and David Wilcock call these people the Dark Alliance, and they're actually people I've been listening to a lot. This one guy, C.W. Chanter, this other guy, Joe from the Carolinas, this other guy, the Dark Journalist, and then there's Joseph P. Farrell, his name is. These are just like people that are in the UFO community that have been talking about this. Another guy's name is Richard Dolan. He's on Ancient Aliens. They're all believers of this stuff, but they are strongly against what Corey Goode is doing, because Corey Goode is a very questionable individual. And this whole thing with the copyright fiasco of Corey Goode patenting and copywriting all of the terms that he used in Cosmic Disclosure, from Secret Space Program to Blue Avians to SSP to 20 and back, all these things. And Jason Rice, another insider in the Secret Space Program, who's on Gaia TV now, who replaced Corey Goode. And there's George Norrie replaced David Wilcock, so they still have the show going on. Jason Rice talks about the same type of stuff that Corey Goode's saying, about going off into the 20 and back program, the secret space, all this stuff. So Corey Goode, as a lawyer, send Jason Rice a letter. You heard about that? I tell you about this? Yeah, send him a letter where he basically, there's no legal action necessary, but it was like an angry lawyer letter, and it's published, it's online, threatening Jason Rice that if he continues to talk about the 20 and back program or secret space program, that he's violating Corey Goode's copyright and that he has to cease and desist immediately. So it's, and then you start looking into this stuff, dude. Gaia TV, when Cosmic Disclosure came out, wanted to copyright and trademark the term disclosure. But there was a backlash to that of people like David Wilcock and guess who? Corey Goode, going up to Gaia saying, you can't copyright disclosure. This is a movement for everybody. You're going to limit disclosure if you copyright it. Corey Goode was spearheading that. Now, Corey Goode is copywriting things like the Blue Avians, allegedly a whole species of aliens. He's trademarked the name of the aliens themselves, the guys that he is the sole intermediary between us and them. And he's copywriting them. And so he's doing the exact thing that he was criticizing Gaia of doing. And when you start going back and looking into Corey Goode and what he was involved with, there was this, remember Project Camelot?
Of course, yeah.
So there was Project Avalon also, which is, because that was Kerry Cassidy and Bill Ryan, those two guys. Bill Ryan started his own thing called Project Avalon. And it was like an online forum where people can come on and discuss alien shit all over. And Corey Goode was actively involved in that community from the years of 2010 through 2014. Posting, and you can go and see he was involved with people, learning stuff. And then suddenly, after several years of being involved in this community, he remembers that he was on this secret space program and starts telling his story. What most likely happened was that Corey Goode data mined all that shit, kind of became familiarized with it, and then came up with a story and spun it in his own way, telling this whole thing that he's the intermediary between the Blue Avians, that he's like the sole person to go and forth. And you can't even talk about disclosure now unless you go through him. So that's a huge red flag for me. So like watching this Above Majestic documentary, hearing Corey Goode talk, I'm like, yeah, I get all the stuff you're saying. Like, I don't deny that most of that's probably real, but coming from you, I don't fucking know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I don't, like I said, I can't read him, but it's all very fishy at this point. So like I said, I don't know what to believe or who to trust anymore, because we used to have these guys that we trusted, and now we feel like they're letting us down, or we've been duped a little bit. So I don't really know where to turn, because that all sounds like, why would you be copywriting this and negating other people from being part of the movement if you were only just about evolution and ascension? Like, why would you try to stop other people from doing that?
Except for like service to self, and that's should be what they're doing, right? If that's the wrong way. And then guess what? The whole copyright thing came to a head recently, where one of the titles that or trademarks Corey Goode wanted to make was Return of the Guardians, as in like Return of the Blue Avians. And so he wants to create a graphic novel called Return of the Guardians. And he put in the copyright for it. He spent lots of money creating the artwork and hiring writers and artists, all this stuff. Puts the copyright in for Return of the Guardians. A week later, his lawyer gets a message from Marvel Comics' lawyer. You heard about that?
No, I saw that coming, obviously.
So, because of Return of the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
And these are people that, for the most likely, have never even looked into Corey Goode or the secret space program and that shit. These are just like comic book lawyers. Now they have to go in and look at all of Corey Goode's material. And they're going to start checking down all the fucking things that he's violating by doing that. So I think Corey Goode's kind of shooting himself in the foot with this whole thing because he's going to end up in a major lawsuit with Marvel Comics. And he's, mark my words, him and David Wilcock are going to be saying that Marvel is now owned by the Cabal and that the Cabal are trying to shut them down. It's crazy.
Of course.
It's
crazy. That's all they could say. And, but like we've made fun of them before for that same thing. Like personally they're being attacked and there's like negative energy beams being sent at them. And it's just always about them being the victim, right? Like they're just trying to stop my progress from my mission that I'm really not important, guys. But I mean, obviously they're coming after me. So there's gotta be something to that, so that we've always made fun of David for his ego. It's always been.
But we did it like lovingly, like endearingly.
Of course.
We're not like attacking.
No. Of course not. It's like a brotherly thing, like, oh yeah, that guy, he's a little bit full of himself, but we still love him. Yeah, give him a heart. But you gotta, knock him down to size every now and then. Be like, okay, all right, reel it in, buddy. But he's gone the other way, it seems, and he's obviously less and less posting and like. He's just not out there as much as it seems like he used to be. So it's kind of hard to gauge the progress, but it seems like every major thing is becoming, his articles, like a third of them, I feel like a third of every article is pushing his book or pushing his conference or something like that about him in one way or another. And so it doesn't surprise me that that's kind of the evolution of it, but you'd think that he would still have the law of one as the root of all this, but that kind of has fallen to the wayside. So it is encouraging though that there are these sealed indictments. I mean, that's like a real number. There's 20 times as many as usual, which is abnormal, obviously. So there's like some tangible things to it, but that doesn't still really mean anything to us. We don't know what that has to do with at all, right? That could be about.
You can only imagine. But there are definitely things like even with the QAnon stuff, like when QAnon posted like tomorrow at 2:35 p.m. Hillary Clinton's going to be arrested. That did not happen, but at the exact same time, all of those Saudi princes were held arrest in Saudi Arabia, and there was like a huge change over there. So it was kind of like a timing thing with that, and it's so strange. It's so strange to see how things are kind of coming out in this way.
Yeah. And what's your perception been of like, because we look into the narrative of movies, whether it is intentional, like conscious or subconsciously, we always get a lot of messages from movies, and some movies have these themes of promoting an idea. It seems like that we see a lot of cabal supported movies where they promote these ideas that these things are bad and these things are good and you should ignore those things and blah blah blah. And then on vice versa, we have the alliance movies, the independently owned studios who are trying to make movies that progress for ascension and give positivity to people and give them hope and believe in themselves. What has been your perspective recently of movies that you've seen, even if they are a couple years old? Has there been more of a push for the cabal and these negative movies, or have you seen more positive?
Yeah. Well, again, I think it's part of the theme. I'm going to stick with that. It's not always so black and white. And I will cite the movie Limitless as the best example of that, where you really can't tell whether that's a positive thing or just like a pharmaceutical commercial for take your pills. I think that a lot of the movies that are coming out now are so there's that gray area. Like there are factions within Hollywood that are within even one movie that are competing to control the narrative of everything that's going on. So it's hard to say. Like I want to lean towards the idea that a lot of the movies that are coming out in Hollywood are actually positive. Anything that really tells the hero's journey is positive. Everybody that wants to share information is positive, and it leaves it into the eye of the beholder to really interpret all of that stuff. So I think,
Sorry.
no, it's all good. I think with Hollywood, really, like, my stance is, like, to use this as a context. Even when David Wilcock in Above Majestic said something along the lines of how all the people, like when Harvey Weinstein got arrested, like he's working to out all the people in Hollywood, like generalizing Hollywood as an entire organization that's just like Satanists and pedophiles, and they're all just trying to skew your perception. I don't subscribe to that at all. So like with the movie Limitless, good example of how there was those competing idea spheres of one being like, yeah, you have the power within yourself to wake up your consciousness, but then the other side is like, oh yeah, you can't do it on your own, you need the pills. Or the end of the movie was a little ambiguous, like, is he still on it? I can't tell. It seems like he's still on it, and he's just skillfully learned a way to lie in another type of way. So I think that a lot of the movies that are coming out of Hollywood, when we talk about, like when David in his article, one of his articles showed the picture of Ready Player One, and like he's like, look at the upside down pentagram, and like look at all the pentagrams everywhere. It's like the pentagram is not an evil symbol. And we've even talked before about the whole Luciferian concept. When you look down into the secret knowledge, I think the secret knowledge is that it's like the first psyop of all time, to get you to look at your creator as actually the bad guy, and that the one that's oppressing you is the good guy. So here's another movie reference I think that demonstrates this perfectly. It's you've seen Coco?
Oh yeah, I love that movie.
Love that movie. Beautiful movie. And that movie, I think, tells the whole story of Enki and Enlil and the whole thing, because the kid grows up not knowing who his great-great-grandfather was, but music is the devil. And the great-grandfather is the devil, basically. We don't want to talk about him. We don't want to play music. But the kid thinks that what's his name, the head honcho with the guitar, he thinks that's his great-grandfather.
Uh-huh.
And everyone in the town looks up to him like a god. Like the music god. He's the greatest musician. Like, remember me. But then he goes on this whole fucking journey and finds out that actually, no, that's not his great-grandfather. That's the guy who killed his great-grandfather. His great-grandfather's been hidden from him the whole time, and he's the one that really, he was the victim in the whole thing. That's the concept of Enki and Enlil, or the whole Luciferian concept, that like the God and devil archetypes in the Bible were switched, and we've been confused about that. So when David Wilcock shows something like an upside-down pentagram in Ready Player One, generalizing it, saying that that's a cabal, Satanist, like propaganda movie, that's not so true. I think Hollywood is a center for the occult wisdom and knowledge about all this stuff in terms of symbolism and true stories of history, even like Tron Legacy, with another exact example of the same thing, where he thinks that Jeff Bridges, that guy's his father, but turns out it's not. That's the guy that pushed his father out. The guy who you think is his father is not really. So I think that's actually true knowledge. So a lot of the movies that are coming out, I think that for the most part, they're all good. They're good in that sense, is that they're providing insight and knowledge into stuff. So I don't know. I'm not so convinced that Hollywood, in like David Wilcock says, is just like a propaganda arm for evil. I'm sure that there are negative aspects to it, but I think the more negative part within Hollywood is not the movies themselves and the stories they're telling, as much as it's the institution and the whole Harvey Weinstein debacle of like people abusing their power within that institution. I think that's the negative part. But they're working with good knowledge in that. So I think a lot of the movies that have been coming out are generally really good in that sense, is that it's the same story. It's the hero's journey over and over and over again. No matter how you tell it, it's the same fucking story. And we resonate with it because we are the hero in the journey. So to go on a limb and say that that's all fucking evil propaganda, I don't agree with. So like, I'm trying to think of a movie, like the only movie that comes to mind as being like a fucking deep state cabal propaganda movie is Above Majestic. Like, ironically, because it's like there's so much negativity in that story.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know. Like, there's been a lot of great movies. Did you see Christopher Robin yet?
I have not. I know you told me to see it, and I almost did a couple times, but no, I haven't. I'm not ready for it apparently. But I know you spoke very highly of that.
So I think there's a lot of really positive stories out there, and even like a movie coming out about Dick Cheney with Christian Bale, which looks fucking awesome.
It does, and Christian Bale and Sam Rockwell, right? Like two actors that I like, regardless of who they are as humans. But when you were talking about like warming up to Dick Cheney, like that was always like he was always the Antichrist, you know, back in the House days. He was the bad guy. But now it looks like just from the preview, it's like not trying to paint him as a good guy, but you're kind of like, you know, you can't just hate. Right? You said you gotta love your enemy. And I feel like this is a step in us like loving Dick Cheney, which to us was, you know, the Henry Kissinger of our day. So I think that's a step in the right direction, even though it is kind of promoting whatever it's promoting. I think it's taking a more non-literal, even if everything is factual. I think the style seems to be just because of the actors and because, you know, that they're both wearing makeup and have an accent and all this stuff. It's like, you know, it's all made up. So it's a little bit more playful, possibly, which is a little bit more endearing, and you could possibly have a different perspective on these two guys now, especially for George. I'm sure at the end we'll just be like, oh, that's Sam Rockwell as George Bush. It's just like,
well, that's
I just want to give a hug, you know?
Like, comedy is one of the best medicines, and laughter is one of the best medicines. So especially when it comes to something like Dick Cheney, the most evil fucking guy you can imagine, if you can add laughter or some sort of compassionate situation, maybe we can see it more clearly. I'm a little optimistic, too, about the way they're going to tell the story as not necessarily being just like, you know, painting Dick Cheney in a good light, because the guy that directed it's the guy that directed The Big Short. Have you seen that?
Right, yeah, which is
great.
Just getting at the truth, just laying it out there, but also having a humanity to it, big time, for sure.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what that's going to turn out to be, and
yeah, it's kind of blurring the realities, like we've been talking about. Not black or not white. It seems like you said every movie is kind of in between these days. For whatever reason, I think they almost can't help it. Even if you made a movie where you were strictly trying to promote the Illuminati way, I feel like inevitably it would end up backfiring on you just because of all the things that you're revealing about yourself when you're trying to specifically send this message out there. Yeah. And then, the Harvey Weinstein stuff. So maybe everyone else is kind of like worried who's next. I mean, Kevin Spacey and whoever else, you know, you don't really know. And I can't help but think back to our main intention that we splattered all over the wall at the house is our main goal was what was to do. And now all of a sudden Hollywood seems to be dismantling through egregious sexual activity, which is kind of how we said we would take down metaphorically. We would take down Hollywood, but it seems like Hollywood is taking itself down now, which is a very interesting thing to me. And I feel like with kind of politics, they're kind of in a similar state where they're kind of changing a little bit, and it's a little bit easier to be independent in movies than independent in politics. But I think they're both kind of going through a metamorphosis where the younger crowd will come up through with new ideas, because both are such old institutions. You know, even the Spielbergs and those guys who used to be the young rebels have now become old Hollywood and
the establishment.
And I don't know if they're good people or bad people, or they're people who made people do things they didn't want to do just to get a job. I can't tell you that, but there's definitely still the old way in the establishment. And the same thing with politicians these days. And I think they're both going to be going through a revamping. I don't know how fast, but I think it's kind of fitting, because that's what we wanted to do, what we had written on the wall. I'm sure we've mentioned on here before. We said we wanted to fuck Hollywood in the ass.
Yeah,
that was our
things we wrote on the wall. Like
that was the emphasized huge thing on the wall, and you know, we meant that in a way like just kind of, you know, take it down, get rid of it, and put up a new one. And it's fucking happening, which is awesome. I think I don't like that all this other stuff's been happening in the background, but we even heard about that at film school as 20-year-olds. I feel like a couple of our teachers mentioned, oh, there are definitely sideways favors, and there's other ways to get ahead in this. It's always who you know and not what you know. And it's like, well, how do you make a friend real easily? You probably jerk them off in the bathroom, and then all of a sudden you got an audition times 10. You know, if you're a big movie star, not necessarily every single one, but it seemed like that was a pathway, a quick escalator from the stairs to get up there. and that's obviously a fucking horrible way of doing things. And I think that will become a revamping. That is one thing that I hope does happen, because David Wilcock pointed out that he's walking into his like hearing with that Elia Kazan book, and the book of the guy who like ratted out everybody in Hollywood, and when they were all getting the communist scare and stuff like that. So that'd be interesting if he sang like a songbird and rolled on everybody, and kind of everybody who's in the Hollywood establishment just got taken out, because that'd be almost just as big as if all the politicians who have been shitty get taken out, because of the control of the perception of things. So if all of a sudden everything was painted a little bit differently, and all, because people are still going to see movies. It's not like that has gone away. Like, people still fucking love movies, and they always will, it seems like. So that still has such a huge impact on people. So if that kind of starts changing guard too, and we start approaching movies differently, and maybe even more psychologically, or smarter, or more efficient, or more fun, then I think that in itself would be a massive change. And I think, like you said, it's kind of inevitably doing that on its own. Like, every movie is kind of, no matter if they're trying to portray something negative, there's still positivities in it. And then I think that there are people out there trying to make positive movies. Obviously, if you're a director and you want to make a movie and you want to make a horror film, you're going to make a good horror film, but not to say that that's part of the cabal's agenda. Yeah. But I think there's still a lot of cool, positive, unique, different aspects happening in film, and it feels a lot less negative than it did 10 years ago. Like, I haven't seen any Indiana Jones 4 movies recently. I haven't seen that level of agenda in anything, even like in the Avengers or any of the Marvel comic book movies. So I'm positive about that.
The Avengers, Thanos, like Thanos is the cabal, so to speak. He's a sympathetic villain who just wants to help the universe, but the way that he thinks helping the universe is to disappear half of everybody, because there's an overpopulation problem. Cabal, right? Get rid of all the heroes and start fresh. And James Cameron, as like a perfect example of somebody who maybe started off making movies that were entertaining and really good, but highlighted the darkest dreams of the cabal with like Terminator Apocalypse and even the Abyss, or Aliens. Aliens. Now it's the complete opposite with Avatar, and the aliens are the good guys and we're the bad guys. And I think, now, I think it's in 2020, Avatar 2 is coming out, and he's already got 4 Avatars scheduled to come out, all 1 year after the other from that point on.
I didn't know that. That's exciting. Finally.
Yeah.
Did they finally finish rendering?
Yeah, I think so. The first movie, they finally finished rendering. Did I tell you what was taking them so long to make Avatar 2 was perfecting how to do 3D photography underwater. So they had the 3D cameras underwater, and then the other thing was getting all of the actors, like the lead actors, to learn how to hold their breath underwater for 5 minutes, which apparently they all did. Like Sigourney Weaver, what's her name, Zoe Saldana or something. They all were doing all this endurance testing to be able to film enough underwater to get these takes. So, and since James Cameron is like that Freemason director guy who, if you follow his trend of movies, somebody who became more successful and didn't have to rely on the producing of those people for so much, started taking the initiative in his own hands, stopped making movies about the light and the dark, good guys versus bad guys. Titanic as the ultimate changeover, where it's a love story, and that split the James Cameron fan base in half. People saying that this movie's bullshit, yet it was the #1 grossing movie of all time at the time, which then was taken over by Avatar as the #1 grossing movie. So Avatar being the great disclosure movie, which David Wilcock and I'm sure and others would say is a satanic, movie that worships, that takes God out of the picture, and they're worshiping trees. But let's be honest here, that's the true story. That's what we should be looking at. So if there's going to be Avatar 2, 3, 4, and forever going on from 2020 on, that's a really good sign.
I agree, and it's kind of, it makes sense that it'll be 10 years then, right, between 1 and 2, or
11.
maybe even more. Yeah, 11 years. So it makes sense why there was no Avatar during that time, to me, at least at this point, to make sense of what I already know now, and not, I wouldn't have guessed that that's how it would have gone. And I know we joked that it would take forever. Everyone kind of knew that it would take forever, especially because I feel like we've known that it was going to be an underwater movie for so long. We're like, holy shit, what's that going to look like? And they were probably like, yeah, what the fuck is that going to look like? And then that's what they've been doing for so long. So I'm excited for that. That's cool. I didn't hear that they actually made an announcement for it, but it makes sense that we had to go through all this shit since the first Avatar, and we like kind of let that linger out there. And the idea of that perspective being kind of flipped from the Alien movie to Avatar, like of bad guys and good guys. But also there were still good guys on either side, and there were still aggressive aliens, or the blue avians, or whatever the fuck they called. What were they called?
The Navi.
Yeah. So there was still good and bad on either side, and it was just kind of learning to work together. Was the major thing. So I can only imagine what
the real protagonist in that movie.
What's that?
Nature was the real protagonist, I think, in that movie. The environment.
I thought you said Nathan, and I was like, of course.
Yes, Nathan was the real protagonist in that. Yeah, he really, yeah.
He was there, right, or something. I don't know. But yeah, it'll be certainly interesting. I mean, every day is interesting now, especially today. I'm anxious to see all the results tomorrow. It'll be very, like, things could possibly have changed today, which is in a positive way. That's exciting. And honestly, I just really want, like I said, I want to know how many people went out and voted and how much of an increase or decrease it was from 2 years ago or the last midterms. So stuff's definitely in the air. Yeah, and I'm excited for it, but it just kind of, to me, it's still setting up the positive, because Mandala hasn't come out yet, and we're not in a place where we're even in production. So it's not like we could even give a 2020 date or a 2030 date or a 2040 date. But it seems like Hollywood is preparing itself for our generation of coming in there and having our own ideas and switching it up, similar to how Coppola and all the other kids did in the 60s and 70s, when they came in there with their new ideas and they made their own movies. And I feel like that there will be another Hollywood renaissance in that way. And starting with Harvey Weinstein, because he was always associated with, like, oh, the best movies come from the Weinsteins. Like, anytime you see that logo come up before the movie, you know it's going to be a classy movie. It's going to be a very well done movie, and there's no bullshit. And now Weinstein is associated with being a sexual deviant, or just a completely shitty, gross old white man who's just, like, done whatever he wanted. And that's like, that was the other perception of Hollywood. And now I feel like that it's switching because of that specific Weinstein. What it used to be viewed as and what it is now viewed as is kind of the forefront of what Hollywood will be viewed as, and kind of similar to what Republicans saw themselves as, and then what Democrats saw themselves as. And it's kind of, everything is kind of morphing from, like, what you can trust and what you can count on to actually maybe not. Maybe there's something else to it, or maybe we were giving our energy to something we shouldn't have, and now we're taking it back and reevaluating it before we redistribute it, which just gives us hope, because people could be more informed now than ever, and they can make educated decisions that will benefit them and also other people. So I like to think that if the old Hollywood gets out of the way and kind of clears the way, I think a lot of positive things will happen, and that will definitely mirror what humanity is going through in real life. And I think it'll blur eventually, right? Like the documentary movie thing, and then it'll just kind of we'll be reflecting each other back and forth. And so I'm hopeful for that for our time to come, because it's hard to see from what we wanted to do and what we've been talking about for a decade to accomplish that in what the climate has been in politics and in Hollywood. So it's fucked up what's happening a bunch, but the changes ultimately, I think, are good, and they're laying out better opportunities and possibilities for a lot more people and a lot more positive ideas, or I hope.
Yeah, and it's like, even with this election too, like, we don't know for sure that even the people we voted for are going to do the things they said they were, or if that's really going to make a difference. A lot of it's symbolic, but the fact that we participate is, I think, the thing that's been lacking so much. Like 20, 30 years ago, people didn't participate, or they participated blindly and like staunchly to a point where they just voted for their team because that's what they thought, you know, like it was a very unconscious type of participation, if any. And then it got to a point where, like in 2016, there was such a low voter turnout. It was like, well, yeah, I mean, granted, there's two choices which really suck here. It's like, well, this is the result of not participating, or participating in a way that compromises our real values, voting for the lesser of two evils and whatnot. So to be able to, for more people to just even participate, have that intention, like, I want to put my 2 cents in, let's agree that we can all put our 2 cents in. That's what America's all about. That's a positive thing. And like Donald Trump, as symbolically, I could think he's an awful symbol for the world in terms of just what he represents. I don't think he's a good role model for kids. Anyone that thinks he is, I would disagree with, very, very forthright, you know, like, but in that way, it's waking people up to want to participate. Like, okay, we need to participate if we want things to change. And it's an incremental process. And so like, but the concept of a revolution and a deep state arrest, and I'm not so sure like about like a disclosure happening in the way that we thought, where it's going to be this big, like a Hollywood ending. The bad guys get it in the end. Like, I don't know if I'm sure if anything's going to be happening, it'll all be happening in the background, but we need to all do our part and participate in the democracy, and also remain open-minded that we don't know everything. That's what led us to this in the first place. So if we keep doing the same shit, expecting different presidents and shit, then, you know, we're fucking wrong. So yeah, we'll see.
That's the only way that we've advanced thus far as our little tribes going through and evolving, is everyone kind of figured out, okay, don't go over there at this time because there's a fucking tiger over there. You know, do this over here because it's really cold over there. Like, everyone gathers their intel and they don't presume to know what's going to happen. They're just trying to figure out the situation. We're just figuring it out, right? And at some point, it seems like we got really certain about shit, that we knew exactly what we needed to do to get to a point where we needed to go. And I'm not even sure if we knew where we wanted to go. Like, did we have a plan? Like, what kind of society did we want to be? What kind of civilization did we want to be? Or are we just going in this direction because it feels like the right direction? And so it feels like it's come to a point where we got too certain, and we got everything was like, yeah, it's the path we're on, and it's what we've been doing, and this is what we're going to do, and then this is the way we're going, and if it's against this way, then it's a bad way. But now it seems like we're hopefully, after the, like you said, 2016 election, it was so complacent, and it was a buildup of complacency. So we got two of the worst of both sides, you know, and one was like, oh, it's a different person from the Republicans. He doesn't sound like Republicans. Like, oh, this is a woman. You know, that's different. That's exciting. We should vote for her just because she's a woman and she wears blue. So both of those things shattered whatever anybody thought about him. Like, most people probably were, even if they voted for Trump and Trump won, I feel like a lot of people's perspectives have changed on that. So I think it was kind of a mixing up of everything and inspiring. And then in the way that we were both inspired to vote for the first time in a while, I feel like people are probably more willing to possibly get involved in politics. People that would have been always just like just be like, no, I don't want anything to do with that. Maybe they had the right, you know, characteristics, and they had the right speech, and they had the right ideas, but they just didn't want to go into politics because of what politics has become. And nobody really you wouldn't, even if you're really good at it, would you really voluntarily want to become a politician these days? Like, I feel like nobody that I know would want to do that, and I wouldn't want to do that. But I had my first thought semi-recently. It's like, that would be interesting to try to go in there and not have a personal agenda, but try to, if you want to do something, then you go do it, right? Like, you can't trust other people. We've learned that over and over and over again. Can't trust these people in the same way that everyone can't trust me, because we blow smoke and hopefully it goes our way, but ultimately it seems like politicians of the past and of the present just kind of like talking and like being on the TV and look at me and I'm the man and I'll make it happen and we puff my chest up and or I'm the first female president and I can do this and I can do that, but really they don't know what the fuck they're doing. And I think we've finally learned that. And like that young lady in New York who got elected, she's like 25 or something like that. She might not have wanted to get into politics if it was the same way that it was 10 years ago, or if she was younger. And I feel like I hope that there are going to be people out there that could be good politicians, but new politicians that are more interested in it now in the same way that you and I are interested in actually just voting. So I feel like that'd be awesome if there was like an influx of 20 to 30 something, even like younger 40-year-olds who just have different ideas to get into politics now, and then try to even just make a little ripple, not necessarily, winning a governorship or winning the presidency or something like that, but getting in there. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if there was a real influx of younger people actively trying to get into politics, which would be really just awesome byproduct of a shitty political climate for so long. But I feel like that's the only way that it can go. It either can get where no one votes, where it's just like, oh, everyone's so disinterested in this political party, this political drama, that we just don't pay attention to it anymore, or new people are inspired to get in there and change it up. Like my brother was just telling me today. So he's a firefighter, and he's maybe the youngest firefighter in there. He's 28, and a lot of the guys have probably been there for 20, almost as long as he's been alive. But they're trying to adapt to modern culture, and they need more firefighters, so it's like, how do they attract them? It's like, we got to get on Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. And the way that they were running their Instagram, which is probably the best way to get at people who are our age, that might be interested in firefighting, is to be like active and kind of hip on Instagram. And my brother was like, looked at their particular firehouse's Instagram and was like, why do you think that like, look at this. It's very obvious to me why people don't want to become firefighters, because this is not interesting at all. You're trying, but you don't know what you're doing. So he like voluntarily went to them and was like, let me take over your Instagram and like kind of modernize it. If you really want to get younger kids interested in this stuff, you have to talk to young kids. You have to know what they want. Like, so he was inspired. They didn't ask him. He went to them and was like, let me take over. I know what you guys don't know what you're doing. Let me try to help you revamp this and actually get some young kids interested in this stuff. So I feel like there's a lot of that going around. I hope it's like, okay, you guys don't know what you're doing. Let me try for a second. If you're trying to talk to us, which is what all the politicians are trying to talk to us, but they don't know what the fuck they're talking about, because they don't know how to talk to us or what to say or what to do or what to bring up. So I'm hoping that people are like, after a while, these kids going through college, it's like, doing school politics and stuff like that. Then they get out and they're just so upset. They're just like, you know what? Fuck it. I'll do it. I just hope there's like a whole generation of people who are just like, forget out, just move out the way. Let me show you how it's done. And I think that can happen. And I think that is going to happen. I really hope it does, but I don't want to do it.
Right. I don't think we're qualified to do that.
No, we're not. Definitely not.
But yeah, we support that. Yeah, I so agree with that. And that's really what's going to bring balance back to the politics in terms of the whole everything's so out of balance with everything is Republican controlled right now. And the Republican Party is tamed under Trump. It's like, that's a distressing concept. Like, we need to really focus on the things that unite us as people, unite us as Americans. How can we start talking to each other as if we're on the same team, which we are, instead of looking at like, which side are you on within America? But that kind of, in terms of politics, that kind of discussion is not even going to be possible unless there is some sort of balance between the Democrats and the Republicans. Like, a third party could emerge, but it's like the two-party system. Like, if there's going to be a third party that emerges, there needs to be some sort of balance in the dialogue between that. It's so, like, on an issue like climate change, on one side, most people think that it's a complete hoax. And on the other side, people think it's the most important issue we need to worry about. And I would lean more towards that. It's like, if we're going to look at something that's going to be uniting us, we all live under the same sun. We all breathe the same air. We should be taking more care of that. We should really, like, we need to put our politics aside and look at, it's like, okay, if we want to survive, we need to work together. And anybody on either side that attempts to be divisive towards the other side and point fingers at the other side is the problem. The left saying, oh, if we just get rid of Donald Trump, everything will be fine. And then the right saying, let's just have Donald Trump forever. It's like those types of, that's not going to fix shit. If your real intention is to help people wake up, like the thing with the taking the horse to the water, but you can't make them drink the water. Like, if you're going to try to tell Jamie or a Republican, a MAGA cult member, that they're wrong, you're going to be talking to a wall. You're not going to be able to get that horse to drink the water. I think we can say, like, if you're even like I would go as far as to say that Jamie's intention, she wants to make America great again. Like a lot of the fucking people in there, they want
most of them, yeah. I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, I would say, yeah, a vast majority of people want things to be good. So we need to say, okay, if that's our intention, we need to think, if we're really honest to that intention, we need to think of more efficient, intelligent ways to communicate that intention, because to say that the Democrats don't believe that is wrong. And then it's like the opposite too. It's a constant, like, tug of war. But at this point, it's like there's more people on one side, and it's just we're taking all the rope and the game is over. It's like, no one's going to be able to have fun if everybody's on one side. We won't be able to fucking even play the game.
Right.
So, yeah, it's like, I think that, like, with all of this stuff, like, in the last 6 months, especially in the last maybe 4 months, with the whole David Wilcock, Corey Goode, Gaia, copyrights, all that shit, it's really gotten me to rethink everything into such a point where, like, yeah, we could watch something like Above Majestic and be like, man, like, a year ago, I would have been, like, all about this shit. Why am I not excited for it?
Mm-hmm.
It's because I think that, like, a lot of these issues are things that are completely out of our control. And they also rest in the throne of fear. Like, there's reptilian overlords spraying invisible mind control gas everywhere. What the fuck am I going to do about that? There's nothing you can fucking do about that. Oh, well, increase your chi, eat healthy food, and be loving. Okay, well then, let's focus on that. It's like, that's a story that, like, I can't even really subscribe to anymore. Yeah. I'll acknowledge that I'm sure that there is shit going on. I'm sure there's a lot more real to it than we know. Like, that time that Jeremy went to that movie party or whatever, and saw, was it Snoop Dogg there? And they asked him about the Illuminati, and Snoop Dogg was like, man, that shit's more real than you know. It's like, yeah, I'm sure that shit's more real than we know. But
hold on, the second part of that story was Snoop Dogg leaving the circle, and Charlize Theron leaning over to Jeremy saying, yeah, how about that Illuminati, and then making out with him. I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah, fuck! I completely forgot Jeremy made out with Charlize.
I don't want, for his sake.
And then went to go to the bathroom, and Captain America was there. And he was like, wow, you're really short. Oh, Captain America was short. Only Jeremy can get away with something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He knows what he's doing.
It's
George Washington, man. He needs to run again. George Washington 2020. Let's do it. I know he's not old enough. We have to wait a couple of years, but okay. Yeah. But exactly. It's there's realness to that stuff, but you're right. It's so out of our realm of reality. I think we like it a lot because we like stories like that, and we want that stuff to be happening. Like, who doesn't want crazy, wild, exciting, dark, secret projects happening, and this almost happening, and then them saving them in the end? It's like, who doesn't want to think that that's happening? Who doesn't want to think magic is possible, or telekinesis, or time travel? Like, you don't have to believe that it happens, but I feel like a lot of people would be like, yeah, it'd be fucking cool if that was, like, going on in the background. I wouldn't mind, it's not really affecting me. But it doesn't really affect us at this point, at least, directly. I mean, it's not going to drastically change our reality. So
it's the opposite. It's like a complete derision from what we should be focusing on.
Well, right. So if that's the case, right, if all those things are true, then what is the point of making a movie that makes you scared about it, right? If there's nothing us can do, everybody who's going to watch that movie, 99.99% of the people who see Above Majestic can they participate and vote on something that's going to make the secret space program all of a sudden benefit them? Probably not. So why would you not focus on being loving and forgiving and understanding and all the positives to it? If that's the only thing that we can do, what's your real objective if you're not promoting that? Like, so you're just trying to get us scared and worked up, or looking more into it, or go into a deep rabbit hole, or stay up till 5 a.m. every morning and go turn into a crazy person. It's like, what is that movie's objective? Yeah. What is that movie really going to do for people? The way that it was portrayed, it's not going to promote love and understanding and any of that. So that should have been the objective, right? That should have been what they were promoting. That should have been the vibe of it.
Totally should have been. And if you follow David Wilcock's work in the very beginning, that's what it was like. It's a complete opposite of all that. And it's like, if you want to look at what like he was saying, the reptilians, they feed on our negative emotions and shit. Like, did he not just do a huge service to the fucking reptilians by making us afraid? And if you
served them up a big meal.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, that's just like, it didn't fucking help anything. And if you really wanted to make it credible, at least get the fucking graphics in the lower thirds right, man. Like, come on. Like, how can anyone take that seriously if it's made like a piece of shit?
Yeah.
They rushed it. They're like, we got to get this out before the cabal breaks down my door and gets me. Like, I can totally see them like, just fucking send it out now.
I can see that as being an excuse too, because clearly people will mention that in the comments. You know, people that were just looking for it. I wasn't even looking for it, and you weren't even looking for it, I'm sure, but it just popped up like, holy shit, this is laughable, to be honest, in some parts. So you know there's going to be a million people commenting about like how shitty it actually was, like production-wise, and you could
a lot of negative reviews about it.
And you could just see a response, David, because he has to defend his ego, as we all do, and posting something like, "Oh yeah, we were rushed. We were told that there was a date where something was going to happen, and we had to get the video out beforehand."
He said that too about one of the negative reviews. I think I told you one of the in his article, his last article. And he was like, above Majestic, #1 documentary of all time, blah, blah, blah. And then he posted like a screenshot of some review that was 1 star and it just said, seriously? And he's like, obviously the deep state has paid shills writing negative reviews for our movies. I'm like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, I know, man. I know. It's wild times.
And you know, another thing too, let's just get on the bandwagon of the evangelical Jesus chose Donald Trump to save us from the pedophiles narrative. Back in the early days of Christianity, they were a minority and literally being burned at the stake for believing in Christ and the whole belief system. And there was such a point where anytime like somebody went up against the Roman pantheon of gods and the government and all that, they would torture them, and then they'd be like, all right, I give up, you know, I accept the, you know, whatever God, like I take back all the Christian stuff. And they're like, all right, send you along your way, and, you know, send that as a message. Anybody else that doesn't agree, you know, will torture you so you change your mind. But then when Christianity came about, suddenly it's like, all right, bring them up, we'll start torturing them. And they wouldn't fucking change their mind. They were like, I don't care, I believe in Jesus, burn me. And they're like, well, we'll burn your daughter first. And they're like, it doesn't matter, like Christ will protect us. So they're like, all right, and they burn that one. And then they start burning them. And it was like, it got to a point where it was like, shit, these people are not like bending to our will. So that's what ultimately led to the Roman government having to adopt Christianity, because majority of the fucking people were Christian. They couldn't, it was like, when you can't beat them, join them kind of a situation. So with that context being said, early days of Christianity, with the context of, you know, Satan pedophiles and Jesus choosing Donald Trump and all that, and like we need to side with Jesus to stop the reptilians, right? I'm making silly analogies, but not so silly when that's how they promote it. But if, let's just say a fucking reptilian alien showed up to your door, you know, what are you going to do? It's like, what are you going to stand up to the reptilians? What are you going to do? It's like, it's in the Christian context, it's like, I want to be in the most loving, accepting understanding of the creator and being in harmony with nature and have some sort of conviction in consciousness to that point where it's just like, eat me. I'm not going to bend to your fucking will. I'm not going to do what you're saying. I don't know what I'd really do if a reptilian said. They might do some psychic mind control, make me do what I want. But
Mhm.
in the context, it's like, to make people afraid of the reptilians to that point, it's like, no, like it just goes so far in the opposite direction of everything that they've talked about and what they've stood for in the past. And it's very negative, very negative.
Agreed. So it confuses me. Like, what, I don't know, who do we think, or have they been compromised, or were they never reliable to begin with? Like, do we believe anybody? Like, because based on what I've seen, there's not much happening. There's just regular old human American politics, and and there's some bad shady shit happening, but there's nothing on the level of cosmic wars happening, and battles over human souls, and people getting abducted, or people getting drugged, or mind control. Like, none of this is really, I've seen no evidence really of any of this, or
There are
extraterrestrial.
like moments where things be like, oh, well, maybe, like there was one of the indictments that was unsealed was that lady that with that Nexium cult thing, where that lady from that show Smallville that was running like a sex trafficking ring, like branding underage people, like selling them off to people. So like there's little moments like that where something does happen and you're like, oh shit, maybe there is stuff going on in the background. But it's like, I think that when it comes to the whole narrative of Corey Goode and David Wilcock, I think they've been compromised to the point where Corey Goode basically probably believes it in his own heart that what he's saying is true. He probably believes it. But I don't believe that. I can't take that as the truth, like him as a truth provider. Like, I think like everything Corey Goode said, like his story about all of that, like whether it's true or not, and even David wrote it in this article, because I think people have been probably writing to him being like, hey, there's all this weird shit going on. Corey Goode doesn't seem to add up. Maybe he made all that shit up. And David said, he's like, whether he's telling the truth or and it actually happened, or it was all just like a psychic transmission, it's irrelevant. So that was David's way of basically acknowledging that, yeah, maybe he is fucking lying, but it doesn't matter because it's still advancing the cause. So I think what Corey Goode said in the beginning about the story, explaining the whole concept of a secret space program, that was all legit. But then when it starts to get weird, like the the Good Child UFO October 14th thing.
Oh, Blossom, yeah.
Yeah, she was gonna be the intermediary between this giant mothership. It's like Corey Goode suddenly turned into the Blue Avians. They chose me to be the intermediary. I'm the reincarnation of Enoch from the Book of Enoch. Go through me like that. Once he starts going into that narrative, that's where it all starts to fall apart. Just like David Wilcock talking about the Law of One. All that great stuff in the beginning, fine. But then once you start getting into the whole conspiracy world, you're starting to get off what is so, the benevolence of your message is falling by the wayside at that point. And then you put the two of them together, and it's just like a fucking, match made in heaven. Or a match made in hell.
And then remembering that David Wilcock is the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce, right? So he's already putting himself on a pedestal, he is very casual, I don't see the resemblance, but everyone says that this is true,
yeah.
So it's like your girlfriend saying that everyone tells me I look like Ariana Grande, I don't see it, but initially just putting you two in the same category with you being able to be humble about it. Yeah, by doing those things, if those were irrelevant, which they are, then they wouldn't be mentioned, but that how people are going to perceive that. So what is the intention of putting that out there? It's immediately making you more important.
Self.
Right, exactly.
Violating their own fucking rules.
Exactly.
So it's and the thing is too, what's great, I'll send you a list of some people to check out. For everybody listening right now, highly recommend looking into CW Chanter on YouTube, Joe from the Carolinas, the Dark Journalist, Richard Dolan. These are all people that are involved in the UFO community, but are challenging Corey Goode's credibility. And so I think that's super important, because after watching something like above Majestic and all this shit going down. It's like, I've been going through, like, I don't know what the fuck I believe anymore. Do I even believe in this shit? Because I don't feel like I do. I feel like I've been lied to. Is this all a big fucking psyop? Like we've been duped. But then when you listen to people like Richard Dolan and all these other guys, like they're very adamant about, yes, this stuff is real. But before we put the carriage ahead of the horse, we need to like go on evidence here. If we're gonna have a disclosure, we need to have fucking actual whistleblowers. We can't just be taking testimony from people based on what they're saying and, oh, I got my inside sources, take it from me. So I think it's almost like a reformation within the UFO community in terms of like, okay, let's get rid of the shit that doesn't make sense. Let's address the things that do add up. But, you know, all intents and purposes, this whole Corey Goode thing is like a cult now. It's like the Blue Avian cult. You know, like I made that video of David Wilcock, and every now and then I'll get a comment, somebody being like, how dare you make fun of David? You know, if you were in his position, I'm not making fun of David. Like I said countless times, I respect it, but I'm still questioning his whole thing, especially the whole Luciferian satanic debacle thing. Like besides David Wilcock's resignation letter, what other evidence do you have to support that understanding? Or are you just taking his word for it? And that's like, that's a slippery slope no matter what avenue you want to take it, whether it's politics or ufology. You know, don't just take one person's word for it. Got to absorb all of it. And there's definitely probably truth to every bit, but no one person has the entire message. And with David Wilcock, it's like, let's imagine the scenario here that I'm sure he, you know, wants to happen. A disclosure will happen. Arrest will happen. Suddenly everybody's in uproar, wondering what the hell's going on. They're going to be like, and then David Wilcock will be standing there and be like, well, I've been talking about this for 10 years. And everyone will come to David Wilcock and he'll be like, see, I told you. And he'll just have a huge, much larger flock of people to talk to. He's a rock star. Like, and this ends with David Wilcock becoming a rock star. And I don't know if that's a good thing.
That is so true. That's exactly what his ego is aiming for, right? Like, I remember him talking about having prophetic dreams. He always talks about his dreams, you know? And it's like, yeah, there were dreams where I've been on TV, and I know there was like, just I was there, I was on the same, he literally said that like he'd be on the same level as Michael Jackson at some point. I remember him, like his dreams like told him that. So he's just like, I'm preparing myself to be that guy. And obviously that would just fill up his ego as much as possible. And I think he's well intended as a human being, but you can see more and more and more and more where what's becoming more important to him and his ego.
He's a human being. That's the number one fact right there, is that he's just susceptible to the power struggle as everyone is, just because he's the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. And the thing is, too, even seeing his lectures, like when he talked about being the reincarnation, he mentioned that it's not like the reincarnation. He actually had that story of the other guy that he tracked down or something that had the exact same astrological chart as him, as Edgar Cayce, and found out that guy had all these weird psychic abilities, but he was like the negative version of that. So how could there be two reincarnations of the same person? And he would say, David said that, and I still agree with this, that any individual that makes a significant impression on Earth people's consciousness leaves like a thumbprint, like a mold or a template that, like, let's say, okay, that was a successful program. Let's do more seasons of that. Let's do spin-off shows of that show. Like Breaking Bad was a success. Let's do Better Call Saul. It's got the same crossover thing. So David Wilcock was a reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. There are many, and I think that's a very important thing, but that gets lost in the mix. And whether it's like, to say one thing is not exactly what we always mean. And it was Aunt Margaret that actually told me that, because she's really close with a lot of the people at the ARE, the Association for Research and Enlightenment, Edgar Cayce's foundation in Virginia Beach. And apparently they got into a conversation about David Wilcock, and those people were saying that David is lying about what they said. David claims that when he got down to Virginia Beach, that they saw him and they're like, oh my God, you're a reincarnation of Edgar Casey. Let's put you through, because he left a procedure. If you pass the test, then we know you're Edgar Casey. So he stayed there for a while learning with them and all that stuff. And then it turned out, apparently, he failed the test. He didn't make most of the requirements on that. Yet claims that he is, they said he's a reincarnation. But Aunt Margaret said that they're like, no, that's not fucking true. So it's as a small little point that I think there was some wisdom there about the concept of reincarnation. But it's a little questionable, slippery slope thing to have on the foundation of your whole platform as being this important figurehead. At one point he was like, well, Edgar Casey was the reincarnation of the priest from Atlantis, Ra-Ta, who's the father of humanity, which makes me your daddy. I remember he said that. He's like, I'm your daddy. It's like, okay, David. It was funny. He makes his silly jokes, and that's fine. Uh-huh. But on some level, I'm sure he fucking believes that.
Yeah, yeah. And it doesn't hurt to sell books, right?
No. Okay.
If you say that kind of stuff. So, yeah, but you're right. Ultimately, we're all human beings, and he's doing something, right? He's at least putting this stuff out there and introducing us to the people, and he's definitely guided us down to quite a path. And I know we personally had that experience with him when we went to his lecture that one day, which I'll never forget. So it's he felt like a good dude when we both met him, talked to him. So it's just one of those things where we're in a good position to analyze people like that, right? We're not out there like he is, and we don't have all these people scrutinizing, who we are and what we say. So we have the luxury of being wrong a lot, and no one really notices. So it's fine. But we can change our opinion a lot, which is also great. And we can judge the shit out of other people, which is also great. But we're not immune to that as well, as we would like to acknowledge. But I think like I said, we've come to a good point where we're both kind of in disbelief and not so quick. We have a thicker filter, I guess. So information takes longer to get to our heart than it did before, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Hopefully we can modify it a little bit and make it more efficient so we don't have to take so long to render or let the things into us. But I think we're at a good point where we're kind of, I'll listen to you, but I don't necessarily believe you. And I'm not going to tell you how I feel right afterwards. I'm going to sit around and think about it for a while before I start telling people or preaching or acting differently according to what I just heard. So I think that's a good metaphor for humanity at this point. It seems like we're, as much as we like to think that we're different people, I think we are both the everyman in our own version of ourselves. I'm sure there were a lot of people who talked like we talked for the last 10 years, didn't vote for a while, and then have come to the same or similar conclusions now because at the time it just seems like, we're in the flow of it. I think that's why we get along well together and why we get along with society. We're not like outcasts. We can go out and talk to people and have a good time, even though we are into some different ideas and think the world works a little bit differently than other people. But we're still very interested and excited about it and trying to be participatory in it. And I just hope that that's a metaphor for what's happening with everything else. I told you about the movie UFO.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it was just one of those things where I was searching new DVD releases and I had never heard of it, and it just popped up, and obviously something called UFO is going to pique my interest. And it seemed like it was a very well done movie, but super on the lower side of the budget wise. They got two big actors, Gillian Anderson and then the other guy who I've seen around a bunch. I don't remember his name. He was in the Bourne movies a lot. So the main actor was a college kid I had not seen before. His buddy was a college kid. I think maybe the girlfriend was a person I'd seen before, but I'm not sure, or the female interest. But it was just this smart guy. It was just very well done and very efficient and not too elaborate, but it's definitely worth checking out. And it was based off of the real sighting. There was a sighting at O'Hare Airport in Chicago in 2007, I think, where this unidentified flying object appeared, and it was written down and it was accounted for, and then the air traffic control saw it, different planes saw it. It was just like, it was noted officially that it was something that happened, but there was no explanation for it. And the guy kind of riffed off of that and made a cool movie about it. But it was just a very positive, a positive movie. And it wasn't like on the level of a Celestine Prophecy where you could tell it was a kind of a tier below, you know, those kind of like Hollywood movies, but it was still below a Hollywood budgeted movie. But it was still very, very well done. And there was, I don't know if it ever got wide release, but I think movies like that, that was just a kind of a testament for movies like that, are kind of getting better and better and better. Like, this wasn't like a fuck off movie. This wasn't like a Cinemax movie that comes on at 2 a.m. that sounds interesting, but the execution is kind of like cringy. It was like very well done, very well thought out. They had like a couple of proper people in there, like supervisors and people they talked to, because there was a lot of actual math in there. So they like studied up a lot, you know, kind of a similar way that Interstellar had somebody in there telling them how, in theory, if this were to happen, this is how it would happen. So it was just like tastefully done and smart movie. And it was just a good sign to me that it wasn't promoting anything. It wasn't saying what the beings looked like or anything, or that what they were in general, just pointing out the facts that if this is really happened, this is what would really happen. And there's a cool little twist to it, and it's definitely worth looking into. But it was just kind of another seed, like there might be something else out there, like things have happened and this is a possibility. They made a drama out of it and they want to, you know, give people an entertaining experience, but it was very, very cool. And I wasn't expecting much from it. And I was like in it the whole time. And it was really a very positive experience. And obviously in the realm of movies and stories that I like, but definitely worth checking out and just encouraging for those types of movies that they're getting better.
Yeah. I'm looking at the Rotten Tomato page for it, and it's actually got pretty good reviews. So I'm definitely.
Yeah, I don't even think I read anything about it. I was literally like, UFO, yeah, I'm in. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Naturally, as I would. Oh, on the same category, I'm going to go see, they're playing 2001 Space Odyssey on 70 millimeter at my favorite theater in Milwaukee pretty soon. So I've only seen it on, you know, the biggest screen was probably the screen at the house, you know, which is only like 40, 50 inch, 60 inches maybe. So I'm super pumped to go see Space Odyssey in a theater.
That's awesome.
That's it. That's all I got. I was just pumped about that. And
yeah.
I'm going to see Tom York actually next month too. He's coming to Milwaukee.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Talk about seeing aliens.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to see Thrice on this Friday for the first time.
Oh, awesome, dude.
Yeah, they're coming to Milwaukee. Probably for the first time since I lived here. Have you heard of it? So I kept trying to revert back to them because their new album, have you listened to it?
Yes, I really like it.
So one of their singles is The Gray, and he talks about he's sick of black and white, and he's turned into the gray. And that's kind of been like the theme of what we've been talking about. Obviously, Thrice is always on point with the themes, but it's a very poppy written song, still very Thrice-y and rocky, but just the chorus is just great. It's just called The Gray, and it kind of he's also been one of the guys kind of promoting in the background. He's been a soundtrack to a lot of our thinkings, right? Like a lot of our conversations, because he's always been, you know, Circus Survive is a little bit more ambiguous about stuff, but Thrice has been a little bit more direct about his beliefs, and it seems as though we kind of align with a lot of his thoughts on stuff. And having this song, like maybe it was his first or second single to this album, just called The Gray, and it was literally like dealing with black and white, but then learning that there's something else to it. And I'm just now starting to lean into the gray, I think he says. So
yeah, that's right. That's
perfect.
Right. That is perfect. Yeah. He's always been that knowledgeable person. And even the Visu and the alchemy index. I mean, there's obviously wisdom within all of that stuff.
Well, right. And the alchemy index just turned 10.
Wow.
Or at least the second bit of it. I guess I didn't realize, because that was my first experience of Thrice. I didn't know who they were until we till we moved into the house, and then that was right when the Alchemy Index came out, or at least because they came out a year after each other, I think. One, you know, air, water, and then our air, earth, and fire, water.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize they just come out. I thought maybe they'd been out I was just very out of the loop.
Yeah.
But that was my intro to them, and then I learned that really wasn't what people knew them for. That was a little bit different.
Yeah, they were kind of like post-hardcore kind of heavy music, and that they were always badass. And every album they've come out with has been solid, in my opinion. Like everyone is very solid, and I like the direction they've gone. They've got like a very bluesy kind of sound nowadays, and that's totally fine with me. I'm glad it's not just like more of the same like hardcore vibe, but they definitely have some hard rock and shit in there, which is great. So yeah, no, they're actually playing in Anaheim on the 17th, so maybe I'll go see them then.
That'd be awesome, dude. Yeah, I'm super psyched to go see him finally. And it was a buy one get one free ticket for me too. So I'm bringing Al. He doesn't really know much about them, but I'm super excited to see them. It's been 10 years in the making. They're probably my favorite band that I've never seen. So I'm super pumped about that. But their new album I love the way that they're going with their music, and bluesy was going to be a word that I was going to use to describe them as well as kind of where they're going. And yeah, they still got their kind of, you know, aggressive rock stuff in there, but then they have like some piano in there this time around too, and a little bit more of a feeling kind of stuff. And then definitely some bluesy stuff in there too. I'm a big fan of their new album, but they always kind of just paint it really well. They paint the scene really well and kind of give me because since you've introduced me to them, I've been into every one of their albums. Like I've been conscious about when they're coming out with them and following them on social media, and I've definitely liked them too. And there was always they kind of described the climate very well. And this one is definitely like I said, everything we've been talking about, kind of like a growth period where everyone's kind of stepping back and reevaluating what they've been thinking for a long time and what they've been kind of blindly following. So it was really comforting hearing his lyrics. Like, I'm growing too. You know, I used to be scared and upset and think that other things were going on and there was no way to beat it. And it was so dark. And now it's like, okay, well, no, it's not just one way or the other. Things are evolving and we're still here, you know, and there's been no 9/11s again or nuclear attacks. You know, it's been bad, but it hasn't been as bad as it could be. And it's also been good in some respects. And this album, Palms, was definitely reflective of that. So it's just perfect for me. And then they're going to be here in, 3 days. So I'm pretty jazzed about that. Have you been listening to have you listened to Lupe Fiasco's new album?
Oh shit, he has a new album? No.
We didn't talk about that yet?
No.
Oh my God, dude, 24 tracks. It's called Waves.
It's called Waves?
Yeah. It's about slavery a lot. So it has I would call it a concept album for sure, but I can't believe we even talked about this. Holy shit. Yeah, dude, you got to listen to it. It's fucking exceptional.
It is. I'm sure it is.
Oh yeah.
That's fucking great.
And I think it was independent as well. So his last album was the last one with Atlantic, and he had all those problems. He had all those issues with Atlantic Records and them just being
He was saying it was going to be like his last record and all that.
Yeah. So this one was I think the first one after being I don't think he released it through any record company or anything. So very independent and like pure Lupe, and 24 tracks, like an hour and 40 minutes long. And there's not a weak joint in there. So it's definitely worth looking into. And that is and then the subject matter is pretty heavy, like I said, about slavery. So a lot of just not new perspectives, but strong perspectives coming out, and like that's coming from a very different place than us, and where Thrice came from. It just kind of seems like a lot of things are being thrown out there now. It's like we never really had to me, meditation is kind of like a timeout. I'm sure people have said that before, but it's like since you were born, you kind of just are thinking. Since you become conscious, you're just thinking and doing the whole time. Even if your job is working in a cubicle and you're sitting in a chair all day, you're still thinking and you're doing stuff. And meditation to me is like trying to slow it down and keeping it blank and just kind of a little refresher, like a juice cleanse, but for your mind, but in a very, very different way because it's been going for 30 years. Well, I guess your diet has been as well, but it's just a motor that's never stopped. And as a society, we've never, because it's just not practical for you to stop and reevaluate. Everyone's always doing something. You need to keep it going. You need to keep the stock market going, the economy, everything needs to keep moving. Otherwise, maybe it'll all fall apart if we stop. But I feel like we're coming to a point where people either have time because they're homeless or they're poor or just because they're more involved or because they've seen something or people are just in a situation or more willing now to kind of slow it down and be like reevaluating things. And I think that's what's giving us a little bit of a change of perspective is that people are actually taking a time out and like rethinking it at least a little bit. Like even just like a second to slow down would be helpful to like kind of catch up on what's been going on. And I feel like we're building towards that. And whether or not if that's what David Wilcock talks about of a 2-week period or a month-long period where there's, you know, power goes out and food can't get to the grocery stores and water shortage and all this stuff, that might just be a metaphor for like a quick timeout. You're like, hold on. Let's just like look at the game for a second and see where we're going and what's like the trends. You know, you always talk about how the Chinese look at things in a longer segment of period and clearly the United States thinks about right now or even like a second ago. Whatever values you as soon as possible. I don't have time to think about tomorrow or next year or in 10 years, which is why, you know, climate change is such a polarizing argument is because people are like, there's no time to think about that right now. Don't even worry about it. It's not even real. Or like, we have to think about the future. It's like, what? Who thinks about the future? No one does that. So don't even worry about it. Either way. But I think
the past. How can we think about the future?
Yeah, right. We're just, what else? What are you talking about? There's no such thing as other things. Just right now, which is like the backwards Buddhist way, you know, like live in the moment, guys. Stop worrying about that shit. Let your grandkids worry about that shit. It's very Buddhist. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But I think we're getting to a point where there's going to be like a cosmic timeout and we could be like, holy shit, hold on. Like, let's stop this, that, and that. And let's start doing this, and that. Like that's what it feels like is going to happen. Or if it's going to be positive, I feel like that is what's going to happen. Obviously, we can see all the negative pathways. We can see how we can get into World War III. We could see how we could become Nazi Germany. We could see all these things. Like it's not hard to imagine all of those things, right? That's all we do is imagine those things. Oh, the apocalypse. Oh, an asteroid. Oh, the reptilians. Oh, the Agarthans. Super volcano. Like all, you know, the ice caps melting. Everything is. It's so easy to read that book, but if it was going to happen the other way, what would happen then? How would that happen? Would it just spontaneously happen? Like some gentleman said, named Bruce Lipton, was there a spontaneous evolution that's built in there? Or is that part of something else that's going to kind of provoke a moment where we have to reanalyze everything and make the choice? Because I feel like we can't just accidentally survive or we can accidentally fuck ourselves up and die, but I feel like we can't accidentally survive. I think that has to be a conscious thing that happens.
Yeah, and even if, let's say that were to happen, like put it on a personal level, like one day we're going to die. Everyone dies. Everyone goes through this point of time. One day it's going to happen, and it's going to happen somehow. We don't know how, we don't know when, but it's going to happen. And a lot of people, like subconsciously, we don't want that. We don't want to die. Like you said, we don't survive by accident. Like we might die by accident, but we might not. We usually don't survive by accident. So like it's almost like accepting the concept of death in general. It's like, well, when it happens, like, you know, what if it does happen? Does that mean you fucked up, or does that mean that we did the wrong path, or we shouldn't have been like this? Maybe it's like, the point is, it's like, it's inevitable, whatever's going to happen. It's just a matter of are we going to be accepting of that part of our path? Like accepting that others, like the yin to the yang, like when we put them together, we're not going to have either side anymore. We're going to have this more complete circle. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, and the never ending story too. I was going to bring that up with Atreyu going through the gate where the two things like shoot the beams at him, and then he has to go to the heart, like what was built up to be like the hardest challenge, which I'm not sure was really the hardest challenge for him. But when he gets to that point, it was a mirror, And it's like you have to stand and like reflect in this mirror, and what he ends up seeing is himself. And that was even the same thing in Star Wars: The Last Jedi. When she goes down into the deeps, like she goes and follows the dark side and gets down there, and it's like, oh, I thought this was going to be a lot scarier than it really is. And then she goes down that fractal path of herself to the mirror, snapping her fingers, Thanos, right? And then just fucking gets to the mirror, and it's like you think that her family's gonna be walking up, and it's just herself, just like in the Star Wars Empire Strikes Back. It was herself, and it's the reflecting part. The reflecting is like the most important part of the journey. And there's the metaphor or the symbol of going down the journey and down the path to the gate. You know, it's got all the never-ending story metaphors you want in here. But you get to that point in the gate, natural thing to do is to go through the gate. And we go down, oh, and there's a new path. Oh, walk down the path, get to the gate. It's like you go to a video game level. The point is to get to the end and go through the tunnel to get to the next level. But the part of the reflecting part is like we keep repeating the same level over and over again. If we get to that gate, instead of going through the gate, we stop. The impulse is to go through, but you got to fight the impulse and stop, turn around, and reflect on the whole place, the journey that got you there, the path. Suddenly you're looking at things from a different perspective. And it's like you were saying before, it's like that time out, that pause moment. And it's like we probably come to this point, we have come to this point in civilization time and time again. And we come to it all the time in our lives. We're born, we live, we die. We're born, we live, we die. But we never really reflect on the journey to the point, like, what's the purpose of all this? Is there a reason that this gate's here? Why did I come to this gate? And so that it's like when you go through it, it's after you have had that filter. So like a bear in hibernation, like the bear represents reflectivity and hibernation. So what a bear will do is consume as much as it can and then go into the cave and sleep that whole time. And it's supposed to represent protection. Like the bear can't survive during the winter time. It needs to retreat into that cave in order to do that. And I think part of the West, specifically Western civilization, Western culture, has always been like avoiding that at all costs, like putting that to the end, like live life to the fullest. And then when you get there, it's like, oh shit, let's just keep pumping out journey. Let's just keep walking and making progress, doing, thinking, like you were saying. But rarely do we just be and listen and reflect. And that's where the real valuable lesson to be learned is, because I think that, like, with all the shit, like reptilians, asteroid, climate change, whatever you want to call it, like, it's like everyone, it's like we're going to go through this transition and we may not physically live through it. I mean, you only live to a certain extent, and, you know, maybe we subscribe to an ascension concept where we have new technology and we can live forever. But I remember it was actually after seeing David Wilcock talk for the first time or the second time, driving back up to LA. I remember right after I got my tie-dye sweatshirt, I remember driving up on the on-ramp from the 405 to the 118, and suddenly it just kind of clicked to me that the ascension that David Wilcock was talking about, the great ascension, is just everyone dies. Not in a scary way, not like everyone's going to die, but like everyone just dies at that point. And then when you get to that point, you experience the opportunity for ascension. Like David even said that just because if you're dead doesn't mean you miss out on all of the cosmic shit that's going to be going on. So it's like they all kind of is like tiptoeing around this fear of death, this fear of moving forward past the threshold. Because the thing is, it's not about it's about reflecting on that whole journey. It's like that's the concept of eternity. There's no end. You're just going to keep going and going and going and going forever. But if we can't learn to live with ourselves now, how can we expect to live with ourselves forever?
That's a great point. That's a horrifying feeling if you're not okay with yourself, that it just keeps kind of going. But I remember you talking about that and I remember me having the feeling of like, oh fuck, death. Like I'm down with a lot of stuff, but death, no, man, I'm not about that. I'd rather not do that, you know, especially if I'm trying to like accomplish something. It's like, I don't want that to be the goal of what I'm trying to accomplish. That sounds, I don't know, that sounds shitty, like a shitty deal. I'm for me, you know, I'm doing all this work or trying to help create these things. And what do I get in the end is like, oh, you get to die. cool.
Yeah, you
I don't want that.
Yeah.
But it's like our perception of that, right? I mean, it wouldn't be death in that way, ascension. There are many metaphors for what death is, and you may have died many times within this lifetime already. A death of an idea. I feel like if we would have watched this podcast 10 years ago of us, it's like they must, that perception died at least a couple of times in between 2007 and 2018. Like, definitely ideas died, hopes died, but things were reborn, and we're still here, and we're different versions of who we were. But yeah, death is the road to awe.
It's the road to awe. It's the road to awe. And what happened at the end? He was alive the whole time.
Yeah.
The past ultimately was just a story his wife wrote, and the future, that could have just been a metaphor for what he was going through in the present moment.
Yeah.
So, and the thing is too, even with like the shamanic rites of initiation and doing this whole plant medicine journey, like in like ayahuasca, or taking the red pill, like that whole thing was part of a culture that honored death as something completely different than what we look at it as now. Like a lot of the ancient carvings and whatever culture you want to look at, they all have this like little carving that looks like a little handbag. It's like looks like a purse. Like all the Anunnaki gods are all holding this little bag. And even in Göbekli Tepe, this fucking site that was unearthed from thousands of years before Stonehenge, carvings of people with these handbags. Like what was in these handbags? And Graham Hancock, who I love, he's like one of my favorite people in the world, talks about ancient civilizations, right? What he says, he's like, people ask him, what was in the handbags? And he says, it was their stash. And people are like, ha ha ha. And he's like, yeah, but I'm not kidding though. That was their stash. Because the culture from back then, they saw the boundaries between life and death as not really a boundary. Like they had knowledge about how to basically, like an antibody. Like if you're sick and you take like an antibiotic, it's something that no, it's not antibiotic. It's something that, what is it? Not like a virus. Like let's say polio, right? And they give you the vaccine for polio. What they're doing is they're giving you they're actually like the polio. They're giving you polio, but they've molecularly defeated it to such a point that it's like a very weak version of polio. Because when people would get polio, the molecule would come in and then the body would be like, oh, fuck, what the hell is this? And it would just like destroy everything. But when you give a vaccine of a weak version of that, it's like a first line defense. Like oh, we know what this is, and it creates antibodies within your system, so that when the polio actually gets to you, your body is already like, yeah, we know what that molecule is. We don't need to worry about that. It gave it like it's an antibody, like a weaker version of that. And I can't remember where.
So are you saying that's what's happened to like us as humanity? Like we've been introduced to these ideas? Like, were you talking about death specifically?
Okay, yeah, death. Okay, so the thing is the like the red pill analogy of like the plant medicines, like the stash of the psychedelic journey that wakes you up to this whole other reality. I think that's like the antibody to death in itself. Because when we die, we have this experience. It's so foreign to us at that moment. We're just like, fear. And then suddenly you're being reborn and you can't, it's like, oh my God, I'm just being reborn. And then, too late. You can't take that consciousness operating system, put it into your new body, because the computer just can't handle it. The brain can't handle it.
Right.
The culture from back then understood that. I think they were using that plant medicine to basically as an antibody for death, so that people were in their like basically coming of age rituals awakened to the idea of what life really is, that it's not just this temporal existence, that there's so much more to what's really going on, and it takes that fear away a little bit. And like you psychedelics, you have a more of a sense of community. You want to make sure you're eating the right food, you don't want bad vibes, that type of stuff. So if we wake up to that, like the whole culture was like onto that, so that when they died, they went to the afterlife like peacefully without fear. So when they came to that gate, they had been reflecting the whole fucking time. So when they get there, they just walk right through and then it's fine. So I think that like it's a lot like that But what's different now, like what might make the ascension now, is that so many people are waking up in their own ways, having their own antibody spiritual experiences, so that what will be different about when everyone dies this time, compared to the previous thousands and thousands of years, is that we have so much more wisdom about who we are, or even just the fact that we don't know, and that we're having community. So that when everyone dies now, it'll be a much more ascension-like experience, as opposed to like living in the dark ages where everyone died and there was no answers to anything.
Mm-hmm. And it was horrifying. It was scary. Everything.
It was scary, and it was all in the hands of other people. Like our salvation was in the hands of the shaman or the priest or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then even recently, your salvation's in the hand of the doctor. You can't do it yourself. The doctor will do it for you. But now more and more people, I think, are waking up to their own empowerment, so that when people die now, there's more likelihood, in my opinion, that there's a good thing. So I think it's like another thing. It's like the ascension, like Dave Wilcock talks about. I think that's all real based on the research, but it might not be exactly the way that he's describing it to be happening because of that fear of death, because we want to be here when the shit goes down. But then, he said it himself, that it doesn't matter if you're dead, you'll still experience it anyway.
Right. Yeah, it'll be wild either way, I think. I think it'll be whatever the conglomeration of everybody's thoughts about what they think death is, I think it'll be the exact opposite of that. Because I just feel like that's the way that we do things now, right? Everything is the opposite of what it should be, so we could learn the whole lesson, and then as soon as we tip it over, we're like, that makes way more sense. We were doing it. Okay, everyone just turned around, like you said, 180. Now we got it. We got the whole other side. We did all the research on that side. Now we can turn around and be like, oh shit, this is way better.
It's kind of like a battery and in your remote, and the battery has a positive and negative polarity, and you're supposed to put it in with the positive end first. But we put it in with the negative end first.
Yep.
Trying to work the TV and it's not fucking working. And we're just like, what the fuck? This fucking TV trying to handle
the energy is running through it wrong because it's trying to give the positive to the negative and the negative to the positive. So it's like, it feels weird. Everything it feels like it's running the wrong way.
Right. So there's that. That's the real, I guess, disclosure metaphor of the moment we realize that the battery is in wrong, and we just got to take the battery out,
pop them out of the remote, flip them around,
ready to go.
And then tape the back of the remote because he broke the little clip thing that clicks in. So it
frustrated. Goddamn remote won't fucking work.
So you got four layers of tape on there, and then it works. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That makes a lot of sense.
Got it. We just figured it out.
Again.
But we're probably wrong. So it's okay.
Most likely. Wrong. Yeah. Oh. So did I tell you about Atlantis? Where I found, I know where the actual city of Atlantis was.
No, you must have forgotten, Alex, to tell me where Atlantis is.
Do a screen share, because holy shit, man, this is it. You're not gonna.
Can we go there? When can we go there?
We should go there. It's
Let's buy a boat. Let's get a boat, and we're gonna go.
We don't need a boat.
Oh, we don't need a boat?
Actually, we don't need a boat. You see what I'm seeing?
I see what you're seeing, I think.
Africa, right? Something. Okay, so this area right here, you see my mouse? This is called the Straits of Gibraltar.
Yeah.
They said it was out here somewhere, so people assumed.
So is Spain part of it?
Spain is part of, the Pillars of Hercules are right here. This area right here. They always thought that Atlantis was, you sailed out beyond the Pillars of Hercules and it was somewhere out here in the Atlantic Ocean. So people thought it was these islands out here. Some people think it's over here. Right. Basically looking underwater because they're like, in a day and a night, Atlantis sunk under the seas, right?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so here's the interesting thing. Okay, now there is something, have you heard of the Eye of Africa before?
I think so, but I don't really know.
Okay, so now you go down here. It's called Mauritania. You zoom in. You can actually start to see it.
This is fun.
See this?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, see an eye.
I see this hole right here?
Yeah.
Little eye. Watch when I get closer.
Uh-huh.
Look what this looks like.
It's got some rings. It's got some rings on it. Yeah, that looks pretty, that's interesting.
That's interesting, right? So this is called the Eye of Africa, and there are actually no official geological explanations to why this is. Some people originally thought it was an asteroid impact, but they've done samples and there's no evidence of asteroid impacts here. Like there's no, like,
Do you know how big that is roughly? Like across?
Guess what? It is exactly from here to here. It is exactly the same amount of distance, same distance that Plato described the city of Atlantis to be. Like, I can't remember if it was like 23 kilometers. Like, that's the translation because Plato was using like hectares or cubits or some shit like that. But when you convert it into miles, it's the exact same actual distance from here to here. Now, the other theory is that this is from a geological, like, subsurface volcano.
Okay.
But even still, there's a lot of questions about why is it so symmetrical and in rings. Now, they call it the Eye of Africa. Now, they didn't even know this was here until the space shuttles were actually doing orbits around the Earth. And they were going over, and they're like, because you can see it from space. Look at that. It's huge.
Yeah. Is that like in the middle of a desert?
It's in the middle of a fucking desert. It is like a very remote area. Okay?
Okay.
Now, what's interesting is that this whole area, yeah, let me show you another website.
How recently did you come across this?
Maybe like a month ago, and I've been like doing more research on it. Yes. Okay, so there's a website called floodmap.net, and it shows you what you can adjust the like sea levels over here.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
You can see, like, what areas would look like if they were flooded.
That's cool.
Mind you, this is like not what it actually looked like during the time of Atlantis, but this is, I'm going to zoom into the same area.
Wait, what did you punch in though? Like,
right, this is what it starts off at when you go to the website. 397 meters.
Oh, what? So it starts off with half the world underwater?
Yes. And you can adjust that. But look, I'm going to zoom into Mauritania. I don't know.
Okay.
Why that is. I think maybe just to highlight this very interesting fact here, that when you zoom into Mauritania and look at where the Eye of Africa is.
Oh, is that it right there? Oh, wow.
So look at that.
So surrounded by
circles of water and land.
Uh-huh.
An island in the middle. And then you can adjust. I can probably adjust it a little bit better here.
Right.
So yeah, I'm not gonna get it perfect, but you can see like right here.
Yeah, I get the idea. Oh, is that like, yeah, the port?
Yeah, the port, exactly. And so this is the island here, and there's mountains right here. There's rivers that come down from the mountains. Like, it to a T. It is exactly what Plato described Atlantis to be. Now, if you look at Google Maps again here, now, a part of Plato's description of Atlantis that people don't really talk about much is that when the flood happened, it covered the entire area, the area of Atlantis, with made it impassable by ship. I'm paraphrasing. That's not exactly what Plato said, but it was something like, basically, the whole area was covered in mud. If you think about it, if a giant tsunami came in from over here, which you can kind of even see, like, look at the streaks. This looks like a giant wave of water just kind of washed over this. This entire area here is covered with seashells on the ground. Huh. And actually bones and fossils of whales and shit. So this was definitely covered up by water at one point. But all of the sediment from the tsunami that came in just kind of like sat there, like when the waters receded. But there's also a couple weird things too, that one of the things Plato says is that the center island of Atlantis was where the temples and the religious centers were, and that there was, in this very center island here, there was a well that sprung up fresh water. And you go here, you can dig anywhere around here and you're going to get salt water. because it's close to the Atlantic Ocean, right? But if you go into the center island, guess what? There's a fucking well, a spring, a hot spring of fresh water.
Wait, somebody's gone there then? Somebody's been there?
Yeah, people have gone there, and when you're standing on the ground, this thing is so huge, you can't even tell this is here. It's like rolling hills.
Uh-huh.
But it actually has this blue fucking, you could see the blue.
Yeah.
Where the water would be. One water ring here, another water ring here, and another water ring here.
Has anyone tried to go
Excavate it? No.
Yeah, excavate? No.
No excavate. Not yet. But this is like a thing that's kind of popping up. And
that's fucking cool.
Yeah, dude, look at that. They call it the Eye of Africa.
How does it feel when you see it? Do you get any tingly feeling in your toes?
Absolutely, 100%. That, in my opinion, that's the capital city of Atlantis. And if you think about it too, that flood. Mauritania, yeah.
Okay.
This whole area here, the continent, because of the tectonic plates and the volcanic activity over the last several thousand years, has been pushing the land up and swelling it. So the land itself has been rising, because right now Mauritania and that Eye of Africa is about 1,300 feet above sea level. Mm-hmm. But back then it would have been much lower, plus the sea levels were lower.
Oh, okay.
The flood map basically just gives you an idea of like if this area were at sea level, this is what it would look like. Gotcha. So
okay.
Still, it's like, just imagine this whole West Africa here was more like, I mean, first of all, this entire area, this big desert, used to be a tropical savanna, like with rivers and lakes, and this was all out in the water over here as an island.
Uh-huh.
And when this climate change event happened, which potentially could have been an asteroid, it could have been solar flares, it could have been a nuclear war, it could have been all the above, but Egypt, their number one colony, due west or due east from where Atlantis was. And it was a worldwide culture, so you're gonna find shit from it, like a sunken ruins all over the place. But this looks exactly like what the capital city of that culture would have been.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Did you see like a documentary on it or something, or come across some?
I did actually. Let me turn the screen share off here. But yeah, I think it was called Visiting Atlantis, and it was on Gaia.
Okay.
Yeah. So
had you heard of it being in Africa before, or was
no idea. I had no fucking clue. And then once I saw the picture of that Google map, I was like, get the fuck out of here. And I went and looked at it, and it was just like I immediately just knew it. I'm like, that's it. There it is, right there. It's just highly eroded, and in the fucking last place you'd be looking, everyone's looking underwater. It's just in the middle of the desert. No one's looking at it.
That's like a huge cosmic joke, I think, is Atlantis isn't underwater.
Yeah, it's a huge fucking cosmic joke.
Wow.
Yeah, so that would be really cool to go out there.
Let's do it, man.
We should.
Sojourn. That's pretty fucking crazy, dude. Yeah, well, send me that the link to that documentary. I definitely want to watch that. But yeah, I think we've covered a lot of good ground today, and it was a good like ceremonious day to do all of this talking in. And I think kind of laid it out quite well. So yeah, what's next? Where do we go from here? Good question.
Where do we go from here?
Yeah, just keep
nowhere with a
riding the wave. Now here, capital of nowhere.
Now here, yeah.
What you do is you go listen to Lupe's new album.
I'm gonna go.
That's what you do, and lots of people should too. But it's waves, man. Then that's definitely what we're going through. Just gotta keep surfing or boogie boarding or whatever else you do. You just stay afloat. But I think we're good. I think we good if we made it. We made it this far, and we haven't. There haven't been any close nuclear threats and no asteroids that we know of, and no winter storms that have 45 feet of snow or crazy things happening like that. I mean, there've been some hurricanes, but I think we're on the right way if we can keep progressing and possibly take that time out that we need. whatever that is for you. I think take your own time out. Doesn't have to be an actual timeout, but something where you could do something like that.
Yeah, it's okay to tag like a tag team. Like
Yeah.
sometimes you just gotta like tag out and let the other guy do it for a minute. And even the other guy could be just the universe. You gotta let go and let the universe do its thing and put trust in the ring or Mother Earth.
Uh-huh.
Mother Earth knows best, and Mother Earth cares for us, and anything we can do to reciprocate that unconditional love, let's go for that. And I think that's one of the best ways to bifurcate, or that's not the right word, just sounded right. Bifurcate.
Well, now that word makes sense. Let's just keep that.
Yeah.
All words are made up. That's what Thor said.
All words are made up. That is what Thor said. Yeah. Yes.
Thor's not wrong. So I agree. It's a good time. It's a good time for humans. It's kind of scary and weird, but I think we're headed in the right way somehow, stumbling, or at least we're getting to a point where we're slowing down enough that we can pick the right direction. Right, we're at the pillars, or we're coming up to the pillars, but we're sprinting. But I think we're just starting to kind of slow down a little bit. It's like a little bit in front of us. We see it coming, so we're slowing our pace down. And hopefully by the time we get there, we can stop and think about it for a second before we make our decision what to do.
Yeah.
And don't get distracted by the big like golden titties.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And don't be afraid of the nothing, because you can't stop the nothing. And that's not the real challenge here.
Right.
What was the challenge in the end? The challenge was to break the fourth wall and see that there's someone reading the story who cares, wants the story to end possibly, and we just gotta come up with a new name, a new word,
a new way, and be able to face yourself while you're doing that, and look at yourself while you're doing it. And Trey, you did it.
Trey, you fucking did it, man.
And he's human.
Yeah.
So we can do it.
Exactly. If Trey, you can do it, we can do it. You're just a boy. I'll go back to my horses.
You did. You won. We did it. And you got it on your hand now.
Yep. Forever.
And that's us.
That's us. Yep. Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. We literally trained with Oglesby.